Back everybody to our latest live stream. This is going to be a very busy live stream. We actually have a lot more to get to than you might think. There is a lot that is going to go into this live stream, including a lot of forecasts, a lot of model discussion, a lot of stuff that is going to be in this forecast. It's probably going to be about a 20 to 30 minute talk just about what we're expecting with this system as it continues to approach Florida. At least I'm going to give you in the first few minutes kind of an idea of what's happening right now, what the exact intensity of this system will be as it approaches Cuba and Florida. So let's go ahead and first hop into the system as of right now, which again is Tropical Storm Ian. This storm as of right now is currently around 60 mile per hour sustained winds. So it has increased from the 5 p.m. advisory, which is again 3 hours ago or so that we had our last advisory. Our latest advisory now is at 60 mile per hour winds. It may become a hurricane as early as overnight tonight. So this is going to be a system to again monitor very closely as it continues to move off to the north and northwest. A lot of convection with this system. We are beginning to see a lot more storm activity fire up in the last hour or two, which is again increasing convection around this, and that's going to continue most likely through the overnight hours. So that's going to be something to keep in mind. You can see the whites that kind of blow up there. That is the representation there of the convection blowing up. Now back out to the north, we do have a hurricane warning in effect for the Cayman Islands. Also, I believe as well as a tropical storm watch for the eastern Cayman Islands. So just something to keep in mind there if you're down in that direction. We do currently have ongoing hurricane warnings as well back up in western Cuba. There are tropical storm warnings for central Cuba, and we also have our first United States watches now in effect for the Florida Keys. There's actually tropical storm watches in effect back down near Key West. That area is now included in a tropical storm watch just west of Marathon. I would expect those to get upgraded to warnings as we get closer. Now, a quick discussion before I get into everything else. This system is expected to become a Category 1 hurricane, most likely overnight tonight or into tomorrow morning. Eventually, it's going to be a Category 2 hurricane, probably heading into sometime around probably late tomorrow, maybe into Tuesday morning. It will eventually strengthen into a Category 3 hurricane over Cuba. It might also get close to a Category 4 level by then. Eventually, it will most likely become I would call it a low-end hurricane, or at least a low-end Category 4 hurricane, excuse me, so kind of on the lower end of the wind speeds, but around 130 miles per hour. Wind gusts could exceed 160 near the eye, so that's what we're talking about with this system. Luckily, those impacts seem to be offshore at this point. Eventually, as we start to get closer to the United States, the current idea is that we'll probably still be around 130 mile per hour sustained winds with this Category 4 system, eventually dropping down to a Category 3 and then a Category 2. But this is the big question mark. Where does this storm head? Does it head to the east towards Tampa, or does it go towards the Florida Panhandle? Because if it goes towards the Florida Panhandle, we're probably talking a landfall around a Category 1 or even a tropical storm. If it makes landfall closer to the west coast like Tampa, this could easily be a Category 2 or 3 hurricane upon landfall. So there's a lot to take in here in terms of what could happen over the next several days. All right, let me hop over to the other graphics here real quick. Let me make sure I'm on the right one. I think this is it. And let's go ahead and kind of hop into some of the graphics I was going to show you. There's a lot, by the way. I'm also going to give you a forecast, a lot more in detail coming up here in just a second. There is already our first forecast, by the way, of storm surge on the Florida Keys. This is the first one. We're going to probably see this increase, and we will probably see more of these forecasts here pretty soon. The National Hurricane Center, though, has issued at least 1 to 3 feet of storm surge along the Keys. That may increase, though. Just keep that in mind. Again, that will be coming out here pretty soon, excuse me. Also, Tropical Storm Ian is currently forecasted to drop a lot of rain to Florida. Now, one thing to keep in mind here is that this is only through Tuesday. This is not including Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, which is when most of the rain will happen. But just through Tuesday alone, we are still talking across Florida, especially southern parts of Florida, between about 2 to 4 inches of rain. That could include areas like Miami, maybe even Tampa Bay getting around 2 to 4 inches before the storm ever even approaches land. Back out to sea, you can clearly see around 10, maybe up to 15 inches of rain well off the coast. So that's kind of just give you an idea of how much rain actually could fall out of this storm. Luckily, it's a quick moving system. It's not going to move like 5 miles per hour over land most likely, but it will probably move around 10 to 15. So the flooding aspect should be slightly lower overall than what we saw in Puerto Rico, for example, with Hurricane Fiona. Now, here's an outlook going into Tuesday for flash flooding risks. There is a slight risk from Tampa and down to the south. That also includes areas like Miami and Key West. So something to keep in mind there. We do have an ongoing slight risk. That is, again, just for Tuesday. So it's not going to be the entire thing. Also, the tropical storm force winds probabilities as of right now, there's still a a lot of uncertainty of where this will go, whether it will make landfall in Tampa or it'll make landfall in the Florida Panhandle. But one thing to keep in mind is that we will likely see tropical storm force winds somewhere along this area on the coastline. Again, it's going to depend on what the track is, but the probabilities are not that high yet, just due to the fact the uncertainty still remains there. Another look at the infrared imagery, by the way, this is a better look at the convection that's blowing up on this system. You can clearly see it here on the radar. A lot of convection all of a sudden blowing up. That's a lot of thunderstorm activity near the eye of the storm as of right now. Now, the National Hurricane Center's track, and this is basically what I already showed. I'm going to get to the forecast here in just a second, but you can see, again, going through Tuesday afternoon, we'll probably get this to a major hurricane. Eventually, by Wednesday morning to Wednesday afternoon, it will probably be around a Category 4 hurricane, and eventually by Thursday, again, a lot of uncertainty remains. If it makes landfall in Tampa, it might still be a Category 3 hurricane. If it goes off to the north towards the Florida Panhandle, this might only be a tropical storm or maybe a low-end hurricane. So, again, a lot of things to keep in mind there. Now, here is a look at the computer models. This is what we refer to as the spaghetti models, and it basically just shows all the computer models onto one graphic showing you where this storm may head. There's a lot of variation still with this, and this is a lot more variation than we typically see around 120 hours out, and even in some instances this is only about 4 days out. So you can clearly see here that there is a lot of variation, again, from about the Florida Panhandle back through areas like Clearwater and Tampa Bay. That's really where the computer models are kind of indicating where this might make landfall, and these are some of the more well-known ones that are typically on the more accurate side. Now, in about 30 minutes or so, this will update to the 000 run, so I'll have a new update on that to see if they become any more consistent or not. But one thing to keep in mind here is that the European model has been overly consistent with its track over the last 3 to 4 days, which that kind of indicates we might see this actually go towards Tampa. Again, more on that here in just a second. Intensity by the computer models as well. You can see it kind of just ranges anywhere from about a Category 1 to Category 2 hurricane over the next 24 to 36 hours, and eventually going closer to the 60-hour mark, this may get to a low-end Category 4 hurricane. But again, very strong hurricanes expected as it enters the Gulf of Mexico. Regardless if it's Category 3 or 4, it's still going to bring a lot of impacts. And this is all the ensembles, the GFS ensembles kind of combined here. And again, a lot of variation anywhere from about Alabama back through Florida, but the risk seems to be greatest right now in the Florida region. So the Panhandle back into the peninsula, back on the west coast of Florida, even maybe near the Big Bend, we could possibly see us make landfall up that direction. So something to keep in mind. All right, now let's get to the forecast and what things are going to impact how strong this gets and whatnot over the next several days. Here is a look at the jet stream going into this upcoming week, and we will see this jet stream dip, and the jet stream is going to play a massive part into the direction of Ian, basically. So if it becomes a hurricane, where it actually heads, this is going to what's going to control it for the most part. And will it go again through Florida, or will it go through the northern portions of Florida back near the Panhandle? That's a big question as of right now. The jet stream will most likely control what we see with this system. And eventually going to late week, that jet stream will start to move off to the north and east. But by then, again, this hurricane will likely be getting tracked off with that jet stream. A lot of question marks with that jet stream, though, still as of right now. That's the big role into what we're going to see with the track of this. Now, looking at the European model, this is what's indicated of as of right now with the European model, which, again, has been overly consistent over the last at least 3 to 4 days, if not maybe a little bit longer than that. But it shows going to Wednesday and even into early Thursday. It approaches areas like the west coast, like Tampa Bay. This is late Wednesday, so around about the afternoon hours, and eventually going to Thursday morning. It gets close to the west coast, and eventually going to late Thursday, it'll probably go back up near the Big Bend. It does not indicate a landfall anymore in Tampa, but it would be pretty close to it. So there very well could be some fairly significant damage to some of those areas in terms of what we're at least forecasting in terms of maybe some wind damage, as well as even some extreme flooding. The GFS model, on the other hand, still shows it going in kind of the similar direction now, but also towards the Big Bend. So again, they're pretty similar now in comparison to 24 hours ago, where the GFS model was bringing it way over here, and the European model is still bringing it here. Over the last about 24 hours, though, they become a little bit more consistent now, going through the Big Bend area of Florida. So the Big Bend, by the way, for those that are not familiar with Florida, is kind of in this region. So just something to keep in mind there. All right. Now let's take a look at the wind gusts over the next several days, kind of give you an idea of what the wind gusts could be, at least in Florida. This is basically this is a GFS model. Again, this is not a forecast. These are just models, so this kind of give you an idea of what we may see with different scenarios. The GFS model, on one hand, is showing wind gusts along the coastline, somewhere around 35, 40 miles per hour. So basically kind of in that tropical storm stage, but eventually the GFS model is still indicative of having the highest wind gusts back up near the Panhandle. And this, again, would be with the situation that we have more shear up in in the northern Gulf of Mexico, which again, we're probably gonna have a lot more shear up this direction. That is why if this hurricane goes up in this direction, it will likely weaken. If it makes landfall in Tampa, on the other hand, it won't weaken a whole lot because the shear again is much greater up in the northern Gulf of Mexico. I forgot to mention that. Here's a look as well at the European model, which again is showing a landfall potentially over the west coast of Florida, and by as early as Wednesday night into Thursday morning, wind gusts could already be getting close to 80 to 90 miles per hour along the coastline. Only go a few, about not even 50 to 100 miles off the coast. They're closer to 110, 120 miles per hour. So again, that's one of our scenarios that we could see as well. And eventually going into potentially early Friday, we'll start to see those wind gusts again start to diminish as it makes landfall. But again, highest wind gusts seem to pretty much be along the coastline here, back up through about Tallahassee, back through Sarasota. So that is our area of biggest concern with the European model as of right now. The GFS model is beginning to agree a bit more on that scenario. And also, this is the NAM model. This is not going to go nearly as far out, but you can kind of get another general idea here. The NAM model, this is another American model. We're kind of looking at the same scenario where we might see some stronger wind gusts on the west coast of Florida. Just thought I'd throw that in there just in case anybody was curious on that computer model. Over to the rainfall totals. This is a big question mark, and we obviously have a lot of uncertainty with everything still, but this is a big question mark. Depending on where the system goes and makes landfall will really play a big part in how much rain we could see with this system. So beginning with the European model, we are currently looking at least over the next 90 hours, there could be some significant rainfall just off the coast if this system kind of takes its eye up in this direction. So again, going closer to the Big Bend. Now, let me go over to the 12Z run real quick. This will be the most recent run. This goes through the next 120 hours at least. So this is just an idea of what the rainfall totals could be. And again, it's not going to be a super slow moving system like Hurricane Fiona was. If you already know, Puerto Rico had 20 to 25 inches of rain. This is a different scenario though. We're talking about a little bit quicker of a moving system, but rainfall totals still could be significant. Even near the coastlines, we could see some isolated amounts between 15 to maybe 20 inches. But again, it's going to depend on the placement of the system. Going into the GFS model, this is another look at a different model, and it shows that again, going off to the north into the panhandle would have the greatest rainfall totals, and just off the coast you can see totals ranging from 20 to 25 inches, but closer to landfall it would be somewhere between 5 to 10, maybe isolated 15 amounts possible, as well as on even the central Florida, like the peninsula, you can see rainfall totals scattered across the area between about 2 to 6 inches. So another thing to keep in mind there. And the NAM model, this is another computer model, only goes through Thursday morning, but another general idea, we could see some significant rainfall totals on the west coast of Florida near Sarasota, Tampa, Cape Coral, etc. along the west coast. Again, it seems to be more favored than anything. This is the QPF as well by the National Weather Service, and it currently indicates, or the Weather Prediction Center more specifically, it indicates how much rain we could see, and it's a very broad area that we're looking at with this forecast. I'm not honestly overly, I'm not going to go with this obviously for a forecast by any means, because it's just so broad. And even in the next 72 hours, this is a bit more accurate what we'll probably see. And this is what I showed pretty much earlier in this forecast. If you've been here for a few minutes, this is what I showed earlier: the heaviest rainfall totals off the coast and a scattered 3 to 6 inches potentially across Florida over the next 2 days from just some tropical showers. But it shows a wide variety of rainfall totals. You can see like Daytona Beach 9 inches, Jacksonville 9 inches, Tallahassee 5 inches, Gainesville almost 8 inches. But again, it's too broad and it's not specific enough to the point where we're probably going to see this exact rainfall total really, or even in that range across the entire state of Florida. It seems very unrealistic at this point. Another thing to keep in mind, there will be a tornado potential with this system. With really any hurricane, this is typically something that we watch for very closely. There is a marginal threat for southern Florida heading into Tuesday. There may be a slight risk going into Wednesday. Tornadoes definitely possible. Again, that's pretty typical with the outer bands and as well as even the inner bands with these systems. All right, let me hop over to one more computer model. This is the Icon model. Another scenario where it shows that it might crash into the west coast of Florida, so near Sarasota. Again, the computer models have been fairly consistent with this area, and beyond there, will it impact South Carolina, North Carolina, the New England area? That's still to be determined. It really depends on the next 24 to 48 hours as we begin to see this system continue to really track out to the north and starts to develop a bit more, because you can again see a lot of convection with this system beginning to develop. Again, we do have hurricane warnings if you're just tuning in effect for areas in Cuba. We do have a tropical storm warning as well for central Cuba, and we do have our first watches that have been issued for the Keys. The Florida Keys are finally under a tropical storm watch. Again, those will probably be upgraded as we get closer. Now, the winds by the Florida Keys, I kind of forgot to mention this, but wind speeds will probably be around 50 to 60 miles per hour, so it'll probably be around tropical storm level. So that's what we're looking at as of right now. All right, let me get some questions. That was a lot to ramble off there about, but again, we'll be kind of going over more stuff. So if you have any particular questions about anything, literally anything, feel free to let me know in the chat. I'll try to get to them. I already talked a lot, but again, I'm going to be live for about 2 to 3 hours. I'm planning on being live until approximately 11 o'clock because the next advisory from the National Hurricane Center comes out at 11. So I'll probably be live until then. All right, let me go and see what we got for questions. Sorry, I've been kind of rambling off here. Hey, Rex, how you doing? Welcome back, as well as Admin. How you doing? I made it to my own stream. There you go. But by the way, kind of something to mention here. You should at least have a plan in place if you're anywhere in Florida in case you do need to be evacuated. Again, not the entire state's going to have to be evacuated by any means, but if you're like on the West Coast near the beach, for example, you definitely have to have a plan in place, something prepared at least, because there's going to be significant storm surge potentially, some significant flooding, and extreme winds definitely possible. But now, the one thing to keep in mind, again, if you're on the Florida Panhandle, the overall threats will probably be lower in terms of the extreme winds. There will probably still be a lot of storm surge along the coast and whatnot, as well as some flooding rains. What the one thing is, the wind shear is going to start to get stronger up in the northern Gulf of Mexico. That is why the current forecast has this going down to a Category 1 hurricane with sustained winds around 85 to 90 miles per hour, closer to the Big Bend in Florida, and eventually going into areas like Georgia, it drops down to like 50 to 55 miles per hour. But you can see again, just off the coast of like Tampa and whatnot, like a few hundred miles west and southwest, it's a Category 4 hurricane. Now, if it does track towards Tampa, we're going to probably see more significant impacts than if it were to go towards the Big Bend. And that's not just due to the fact more people live in the Tampa area. It's because of the overall environment that it has back up in the northern portions of like the Florida Panhandle and whatnot. It's just a lot more sheer. And then back down in portions of the West Coast, there's a lot less sheer. So we're going to probably see it still remain pretty strong up that direction. All right, our class is canceled. I don't think so yet. I'll keep you updated. I'll keep you guys updated on Twitter and Discord. And again, if they are canceled, I will probably have fairly long live streams this week. So, when's this storm expected to hit Florida? That's a good question. Now, I don't have the timestamps, unfortunately, on here. I actually have a graphic somewhere. Let me do this. Let's go back over to the tropics. I'm not sure if it's on here. It might be. Okay, it is on here. So this is a look at it. Let's see if I can kind of... Oh, I actually have a couple of graphics to show. I just need to make sure it's on the right screen. I don't know how I can get rid of this white space up here. It's going to be kind of annoying. Let me go and do this. Let's go and shift it just a little bit. And let's go and widen this a little bit. Let me just go and do this. All right, there we go. So it won't show absolutely everything on here. I'll kind of just shift it to the spot it has to be at. There we go. So this is basically the current forecast by the National Hurricane Center. It does exclude a couple of things because I can't fit everything on here, but just a couple of things to note. Back near Cuba, it's expected to be a Category 3 hurricane, probably by Tuesday morning, maybe the early afternoon hours, with sustained winds around 120 miles per hour. If not, it will happen just after that. Eventually going to Tuesday night, maybe into Wednesday morning, it's expected to be a Category 4 hurricane. Now, from there, again, depending if it goes further off to the west, or excuse me, further off to the north, or further off to the northeast and east, that plays a big part into what the strength and intensity is long-term as it approaches the coastline. Again, if it goes towards the Florida Panhandle, it's probably going to be a weaker end sort of hurricane, maybe a Category 1 when it makes landfall up that direction. Back on the west coast, though, it could be a Category 2 or 3, so that's just something we have to keep in mind. But eventually going closer to Wednesday, again, it's still far west of Tampa, probably by a few hundred miles. It'll probably be still a Category 3 hurricane with sustained winds around 120 miles per hour, and eventually going closer to the Big Bend, closer to about Friday morning. Now, the specific landfall by the National Hurricane Center, let me go over to it. This is their current forecast. Let me just put it back into full perspective here. So their current forecast is around Thursday night into Friday morning is when it'll make landfall. It's not specified here, but that would be about the time frame on when it makes landfall, if it makes landfall in northern Florida. Again, if it makes landfall on the west coast, it could be sometime early to mid Thursday. So that's what we're looking at as of right now. All right, let's go back over to the screen. Yeah, here's a look at the overall infrared imagery as of right now with this system. I'll show you a few other things here in a second. All right, let me back over to the chat. Again, feel free to leave any questions in the chat. I'm going to try to get to all of them. I'm still pretty far behind on chat, but... And I'm also, by the way, in Florida, so this will be interesting to see what happens here. Be pretty interesting. It's going to be an interesting event, to say the least, for me. I've never actually gone through a hurricane before, so I will be going through one. Most likely, at least. I think I will. Hey, Christopher, how you doing? Joe, how you doing? Welcome. By the way, if you're new here, make sure to hit the subscribe button. I forgot to mention that. We'll keep you updated again. We'll be doing a lot of live streams this week, so. Is the severe thunderstorm warning in Michigan anything to worry about? I don't think so. I don't think there's anything too crazy today. Isolated, I think, damaging winds and maybe a little bit of hail will be possible up that direction. Is Columbia, South Carolina really expected the jet stream? Wait, really expect the jet stream to hook right back? All right, so the one thing is with the long-term track, there's obviously a lot of uncertainty there. Let me go and show you. Let's go back. I'm gonna have to keep going back and forth here a little bit. Let's go back over to this. Let's go to this. And let's go to the long-term computer models. This is a look at the long-term stuff in terms of, where this might head beyond, within the next 5 days or so. Once it goes up to the north, there's a lot of question marks. Again, if it makes landfall somewhere here in West Florida or somewhere in the Big Bend, it probably will track somewhere closer to areas like South Carolina and North Carolina. But typically the rainfall is kind of on the northern and eastern ends. So again, something to keep in mind there. Most of the rainfall is typically on the eastern side of the storm, but there's a lot of uncertainty. You can just see all the ensembles are kind of in a big disagreement on what the long-term track of this is. It really could go as far west as Ohio. It could go as far east as the Atlantic Ocean, and that's kind of the range that we're dealing with as of right now. So whether it does go towards areas like New England and makes impacts there, or makes impacts to the Carolinas, that is really to be determined. There's no specific, thing that you can expect right now. You just got to be watching it. Winds will not be that big of a threat. Typically, it's just gusty winds once it makes landfall. So Georgia, for example, unless you're in extreme southern Georgia, so like central northern Georgia through the Carolinas, no need to panic or be that concerned right now. There's really just no reason. I mean, winds might be a possibility. Heavy rain, I would say, would probably be a bigger threat more than anything, but that's really it for right now. If the system goes out into the Atlantic Ocean like this, that could be potentially dangerous, but it does not seem like that's going to happen at this point. There's only like one computer model that's shown that out of dozens that are probably more accurate than that one anyway. So that's what we're looking at as of right now. All right, let's go back over to here. Again, feel free to pop questions in the chat. I'll try to get to all of them. All right. I already answered your question. That was good to know. My bad. No problem, Dan. Appreciate you tuning in. There's something going on in Michigan? I don't think, unless there's a couple of storms up there. This is just a wide view of everything. And maybe a couple of storms. There's actually some damaging wind events going on up in Chicago. I didn't even know that. To look up there in a second. By the way, this is kind of a cool look at it. Let me go and show you guys a thing that I discovered. This is another look at the system that's going towards Florida. Just a little interesting view of it. Kind of shows you a bit more of a different perspective. I've never done this before. I don't know if you guys even like this view, but it's kind of interesting. All right. By the way, if you missed the initial forecast I did at the very beginning with all the forecasts and basically everything like that, I will probably reiterate it here in, let's see what time it is. I'll probably do it again another 40 minutes, but any specific questions, feel free to let me know. I already did the full forecast, so if you want to go to the very beginning of this live stream, you can always do that as well if you don't have any specific questions yet. All right, I'm back to the bottom of the chat here, by the way, so I'm sticking with the Euro model. Yeah, the European model has been overly consistent. I'm gonna keep doing this. Let's go back over to the graphics on here. And this is a look at the GFS model. I'm gonna show you the European model though. So this is the European model from a few days ago. I'm gonna kind of do a couple of these here. So this is the European model from last Friday in comparison to now. So this is the European model from Friday. You can see it actually makes landfall further south in Florida. So that was a big difference. This is like the late Thursday run. Then eventually going into the Friday run, about Friday afternoon, it still kind of showed something similar, but it went a bit further north. Still has a pretty strong, hurricane at that point in southern Florida. Obviously, that's no longer forecasted to happen. Why is this subscribe button stuck? I don't know why that's here. Wait, let me try to get rid of this. I apologize. I don't know why that was there. But that's just another look at it. Then eventually going to Saturday is showing it's going to go closer to Tampa. And that has been very consistent. This track has been extremely consistent since literally yesterday morning. So we are still probably at least thinking that this is either going to make landfall somewhere along the west coast of Florida or somewhere back up in the Florida Panhandle. The likelihood of either scenario is kind of split right now. There's no really definitive answer that we can really give you. Because again, if you look at the bubble of uncertainty here, it is still very large. Let me go ahead and go back to the other angle real quick. So this is a look at the uncertainty that we have. again, areas from Cape Coral all the way back up through like Interstate 10 back up near Brent and Pensacola almost are basically included in where the eye of the storm could go. This is just the eye, by the way. This is not the overall impacts, because the impacts could be felt this far south into Miami. It could also be felt as far west as areas like Alabama, maybe even as far west as New Orleans. So a couple areas to watch there. It's still a very wide area that we're looking at right now in terms of where this really could go. And it's, again, a lot of uncertainty that we have as of right now with this system long term. And that's why this cone of uncertainty, again, is so large, because we just don't know, because the computer models, again, there's just a lot of variation with the trough that we have back up in New England and whatnot next week. There's still some question marks on how much that will affect the system. Not just that, but also the shear that's going to play a part in the northern Gulf of Mexico. How much that will impact the system seems to be pretty significant, because again, it's probably going to drop down to either a category 1 hurricane, maybe even a tropical storm by the time it makes landfall up in like areas like the Big Bend, if it goes that far north. If it goes to the east, again, closer to Tampa, it really very well could be a category 3 hurricane on landfall. So that's really what we're dealing with as of right now. Again, there's just so much uncertainty long term, but you just need to be prepared. Again, if you're in Florida, get prepared. I'm in Florida. I'm already prepared, other than my gas tank being at literally like 20 miles. But beyond that, I have water, food, generator, all that sort of stuff. Make sure you're getting prepared if you're in Florida, because again, we could very well see some pretty significant impacts really anywhere in Florida. It's a very wide area as of right now. By the way, if you're just tuning in, hit the subscribe button. Again, I'm going to be doing a lot more live streams like this over the next few days. I'll probably have another one tomorrow night with updates. So, all right, let me get back to the beginning of the chat here. Hey, Hope, how you doing? Welcome back. By the way, thank you to... I missed something. Thank you, Tori, for becoming a 3-month member. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'll be staying safe, trust me. Oh, by the way, thank you, Miss K, for giving a $75 donation off stream. I really do appreciate that. That was from earlier. Again, I'm in Florida, so I'm basically bracing for the worst at this point. I will not be chasing, by the way. I will be just doing live coverage. I don't plan on chasing, just because it's probably gonna be pretty dangerous. I might do some like after the storm chasing, but we'll see what happens. Thank you, Squidward, by the way, for gifting a member. Appreciate it. Thank you. Hey, good to hear, Liam. So Liam is prepared. That's good to hear. I'm guessing that we'll see the remnants of that in Pennsylvania. There's a pretty good chance that areas up along the East Coast will see probably a good amount of rain, and probably the remnants of it as well. Yeah, overall, rain would be basically the only thing that I'd expect up that direction, unless it goes off the East Coast and it kind of rides along the East Coast, which again seems pretty unlikely. This is, again, a very large bubble of uncertainty, and there's still a realistic chance that this system very well could go. Let me go and draw this here. It very well could go into areas like the Atlantic Ocean. I mean, again, the bubble of uncertainty is very large, so it's definitely a possibility, but it does seem like a low chance. Even if it goes into the Atlantic Ocean, that could potentially become a little bit dangerous. If it goes just inland like this, it won't be that dangerous. It'll probably just bring rain and some gusty winds along the coastline. That's kind of what's expected, at least as of right now. I have not heard anything about canceled classes, by the way, yet. I hope I'm going to hear that pretty soon, but I'm not sure yet. We got a Category 5 tennis ball launcher, yes. But I think, honestly, over the next 24 hours, we will probably get more of an idea of when we can expect, or really where we can expect this system to go. Because obviously the next 24 hours, I'd say, are really the organization stage. And right now it's organizing. Again, it's moving currently off to the northwest. It's kind of going to go in this direction here. Most likely, maybe even a little bit further off to the east there. But regardless, it's going to kind of go off in that direction. Eventually, it's going to interact with Cuba. Now, the initial forecast, for those that are wondering, was that actually it was supposed to go like in this direction almost, potentially towards like the Keys, and it was going to make more of an interaction with Cuba. Now it's forecasted to make a very minimal interaction with Cuba. That's why it's going to strengthen to potentially a Category 4 hurricane just west of the Florida Keys. So something to keep in mind. And again, if you're just tuning in, there is now tropical storm watches in effect for the Florida Keys. We officially have that now in that area. Here's another look at it, by the way, just a different angle. All right, back to chat. Any updates on the Atlanta area? The Atlanta area, I don't really have any updates for you. Again, just be prepared, but really the only thing you need to be prepared for would be just heavy rain, maybe some flash flooding. It's really my only concern as of right now. Any tips on how to prepare? That's a really good question. I'll give you a few. I'm not going to give you every single tip, because there's a lot that you can do to really prepare. But if you're in Florida, for example, it depends on where you are. So if you're on like the west coast of Florida, or even on the anywhere near the coastline of Florida, I would say on the west coast, or even up back in the peninsula, me go back over to here. So anywhere in the peninsula or the panhandle along the west coast or along the south coast, you really want to make sure you have water ready. You have, you know, a plan in place if you are to be evacuated or if you're recommended to be evacuated. Because if there's a category 3 hurricane or whatever coming toward you, you're going to want to probably evacuate and get away from the coastline because there could be some dangerous storm surge, extreme flooding rains, and whatnot. But if you're a little bit more inland and you want to kind of brace the storm, which I honestly don't recommend doing, if at least, you know, again, we got a few days, so you don't have to panic about it. But I wouldn't recommend bracing this storm if you're going to be kind of in the eye of the storm at this point. So again, if the system goes towards the Big Bend, for example, again, anywhere just like south of Tallahassee, if it goes in that direction, you should consider at least putting your plan in place in case you do have to evacuate. I don't know how the evacuations will work with this system because, again, if it goes off to the north, it's probably not going to be nearly as bad as if it were to be going towards Tampa. So still a lot of question marks there, but I would at least have water ready, food ready, you know, especially perishables and whatnot. You're going to want to, if you have a generator, for example, make sure that's working and charged up because, you know, I had to actually do that recently because I have a generator, so I had to make sure it was charged up and whatnot. Yeah, that sort of thing. I mean, again, make sure you have enough water and stuff like that. The essentials is really what you want, maybe a radio, that sort of thing. It's really what I can say at this point, but obviously be prepared for the worst. That's typically what you want to be planning for because, you know, be prepared. It's a big thing with hurricanes and tropical storms and everything really that comes your way. And, you know, if you were to be on a tornado watch, for example, you want to be prepared. Have a plan in place to seek shelter. That's kind of what you want to do with a hurricane. Have a plan in place before it ever gets there, just in case things do get a little bit bad. But yeah, that's kind of what I can recommend for you at this point. Again, there's a lot more better tips and more organized tips on the National Hurricane Center's site. Those are just few things that I've at least personally done here in Florida. And again, I'm in Florida for those that are wondering, so it will be an interesting event to say the least. I will be covering it as well in Florida live, so stay tuned. Again, hit the subscribe button if you're new here. I'll be live covering it. By the way, thank you everybody for subscribing. I appreciate it. I won't be able to get to all the names. I'm going to be focusing mostly on questions, so what will happen with Miami? Miami might see... Okay, let me go back over to the other graphics. I've been on this one for a while. Let's go over to... this. All right, so here's a look at the wind gusts. I'll kind of show you a couple of things here. For those that are just tuning in that are in Florida, I'll initially show you the wind gusts. This is pretty much almost the worst case scenario if this were to make landfall in western Florida. So areas like Tampa, Sarasota, this is basically worst case scenario, basically the furthest east this goes. And the wind speeds, or the wind gusts at least, probably will get as high as 80 to 90, maybe even up to 100 miles per hour right along the west coast of Florida. Again, if it takes this track, it's just one little model that we're looking at. It's not an actual forecast. But areas like Miami, for example, wind gusts might peak up to 50 to maybe 60 miles per hour at the very most, and that's again if it takes that easterly track. Another thing to keep in mind is the rainfall totals, which this is the European model. Again, this is the one model that's been very consistent. That's why I'm showing it. Rainfall totals scattered across Florida, like southeast Florida, anywhere from Port St. Lucie back through Miami, are between about 3 to 4 inches of rain. In comparison to areas like Tampa and Sarasota that are closer to like 10 inches of rain, again, if it was to make landfall over there. There could be even isolated higher amounts between 10 to 15, maybe even up to 20 inches of rain. So that's what we're looking at as of right now. Again, in terms of the computer model, the National Hurricane Center has not issued a specific forecast beyond the 3-day outlook, which is basically up until Tuesday. So we don't really have an official forecast as of right now for rainfall totals, at least beyond Tuesday. So, but again, we'll be getting there pretty soon. This is just one computer model run. Again, I could show you another one like the GFS model, for example, that shows the track into areas like the Florida Panhandle, and it shows that we'll have the heaviest rainfall totals back up in Tallahassee with more reasonable rainfall totals near 4 inches near Tampa, so it's not nearly as significant. But again, we'll have more information coming for you over the next few days. It's just computer models, so not something you should take too seriously. Just make sure you're prepared for the worst at this point, because again, this will be a pretty dangerous storm to say the least as it continues to march out to the north and northwest. And another thing to keep in mind, by the way, this is going to most likely strengthen to a Category 1 hurricane overnight tonight. So for those that are wondering, it's currently at 60 mile per hour sustained winds. The pressure around 991 millibars. The speed is about 13 to 15 miles per hour off to the northwest right now. It's going to start to turn off to the north as we get closer to Cuba. So that's what's forecasted as of right now. Again, we're back over to the infrared imagery. I'll actually go and pull up the other radars that we have if you guys are curious. Let me go and go back over to this. This is the visible satellite. I'll go and see if I pull this up. I'm not sure if either of these work. Let's go and zoom out a little bit. All right, so the visible satellite it kind of turns off here. This is the beginning of it, though. I don't know how far I can go back here. So this was the beginning of the visible satellite, for example. You can kind of see it's kind of organizing a little bit. So a little bit more of a friendly, user-friendly sort of look at the satellite, at least. But obviously, it's fizzled out. We are at nighttime. Obviously, the sunset here if you're not from the East Coast, the sun has already set. But back over to the infrared imagery. I'll see if I can pull up anything else. This is the water vapor, by the way. I haven't actually showed this. This is the water vapor. And you can, again, see a lot of drier air still up in Florida. Again, that's not going to be staying there for much longer. A lot of storm activity, a lot of convection as well back down near the eye of the storm. And again, that's going to be continuing to move off to the north over the next few days. See if I can pull up anything else that is of interest. I have a lot of different satellite imageries and whatnot. I'm not sure which other ones I can pull up here. This is also another water vapor look. So different look at the storm, but... Again, the light blues are representing the higher cloud tops and whatnot, the strongest of the storms that we're currently looking at embedded in the ongoing tropical storm Ian. So let me just go back to the one that we're on. Let's go back over to this. And again, here's your track as of right now. I'll leave it on here for a second. Let's go back to chat questions. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to let me know in the chat. Thank you, Squidward, by the way, for becoming a Hurricane Chaser member. I appreciate that a lot. Thank you. Appreciate your support. Do I think it'll hit Panama City? Probably not, at least not a direct hit. But again, be prepared, just in case. But regardless, on the Florida Panhandle, it's probably going to be a weaker system as it gets up that direction. It is currently forecasted. Let me go back up a little bit further here. Let's go to this. So back up near the Big Bend, for example, we can see that, again, this is the current forecast. It's a large bubble of uncertainty. So again, the eye could go anywhere in here, but it's currently forecasted to have sustained winds around 90 miles per hour. If it were to go this far to the north towards areas like Perry, for example, and again, Panama City, if it were to hit that area, for example, it could potentially be around 90 miles per hour upon landfall. Now, in comparison again to areas like Tampa, if this were to take a more easterly track going towards potentially Tampa, obviously it'd be a bit more like this or something like that. It would potentially bring category 2 to 3 wind speeds across the west coast of Florida. So again, areas from Sarasota back up through Holiday and eventually back through areas like Spring Hill. By the way, here's a look at the live radar as of right now. I'm not sure if there's gonna be a whole lot on here. Yeah, there's a couple of storms out there in western Florida right now, but obviously a lot of precipitation actually along Interstate 95 as well today. But other than that, it's been obviously some tropical showers at this point across portions of Florida. We'll see a lot more from where this came from, by the way, over the next few days, which is why there is a potential for flash flooding going in at least to Tuesday. So let's go back down over to here for right now. Go back over to here. Let's have impacts on the weather in the Midwest at all later in the week. Not really, not to the Midwest. And the Midwest, unless Ohio is really the Ohio Valley, but furthest west I expect really any of this rain to go would maybe be Ohio. It's kind of my thinking at this point. If you're back over in the Midwest, there's going to be drier air over there. So can I tell you the banned phrases in forecasting? I know of 2 phrases that are banned. As you can see, and I think it's as you can tell, as you can see, as you can tell, something along those lines. And take a look at. Those are the banned phrases. I used them so many times already in this live stream, so I'm keeping a mental note of how many times I've already said that. All right, let me back into chat here. So yeah, it's pretty bad right now again, I've been doing it for a couple of years, so I have to kind of get rid of that. All right, let me back over to here. Statesboro, Georgia. I'm not sure where Statesboro, Georgia is, but if it's in southern Georgia, I'm not entirely sure what the geography here in Georgia. But basically, if you're in southern Georgia, be prepared, obviously. Anywhere in Georgia, you should really at least be prepared for something with this system. If you're in southern Georgia, for example, be prepared for maybe some winds up to 60 to 70 miles per hour, maybe a low-end tornado potential as well. Especially if you're in eastern Georgia. Storm surge along the east coast should be pretty minimal, but there might be a little bit, at least some higher waves along the east coast there. So from Savannah back down through Jacksonville. But overall, rain is going to be the main concern as it gets inland. Typically, the wind speeds drop off. You can see maybe near 70 miles per hour near southern Georgia, eventually going towards Interstate 16, or Interstate 16. It's around 50 to 55 miles per hour near the eye. So winds will drop off naturally, but 70 to 75 miles per hour is still going to be possible in southern Georgia. So along Interstate 75 there. And again, it's going to become a Category 4 hurricane. Luckily, those impacts should stay to the west of Florida. but it still might be a category 2 or 3 somewhere along the west coast of Florida. If it goes in that direction, if it goes off to the Florida Panhandle, again, shear will take over, and that will likely keep the system weaker back up in the northern Gulf of Mexico. So a couple of things to keep in mind. By the way, Jim Cantori and a few of those other people from the Weather Channel are actually already in Clearwater, Florida. So they're already prepared for that area. They are actually not up in the Florida Panhandle right now. So they are kind of putting a bet on it. It'll probably be in the Tampa region for landfall. Obviously, they can always move if they need to, but just something to keep in mind. They're prepared for at least Tampa as of right now. And we'll see what happens from there. All right, let's go back over to here. Definitely. I don't know. The banned phrases and weather. I only know of 2 of them right now, at least phrases. There's going to be more, though. Trust me. I think next week I learn a couple, unless school gets canceled, which, again, might. Again, this stream will be pretty detailed. I'm going to be, again, if you have any questions, pop them in the chat. I will probably be live until at least 11 p.m. Eastern, maybe a little bit after that. The next National Hurricane Center Outlook or Advisory comes out at 11 p.m. But we will have another update actually from the computer models in about 5 to 10 minutes. So stay tuned for that. That's something more soon to kind of be at least looking at here in a few minutes. I'm pretty sure it comes out in 5 to 10 minutes. Let me double check my other monitor here. Because the overall like spaghetti models and whatnot, they come out. Actually, they've already come out. Never mind. Let's go over to those. We have a new update on the spaghetti models. Or whoever calls it. So I actually don't call it spaghetti models. I've only recently started calling it that, and I don't know why. But let's go over to that. Let's go over to the tropics, I think it is, and let's go to the new spaghetti models run, if you want to call it that, at the latest update. So still a lot of uncertainty. It's not really surprising at this point, but there's still a lot of uncertainty with this system. But there's a couple of things to note here. We still have a load of computer models bringing this into Tampa. The uncertainty still remains with the Florida Panhandle. There's only a few computer models still up there in the Florida Panhandle. Now, regardless, you should be prepared from, again, central, basically anywhere from about Panama City back through about Sarasota for the potential for it making landfall in your area. But one thing to note here is that we're still seeing a lot of computer models bring this closer to areas like Tampa. Long term, as I mentioned before, going through Georgia and whatnot, there's still a lot of uncertainty. There are a couple of computer models that bring it into the Atlantic Ocean, which could be a bit dangerous, but that's what we're looking at as of right now. Again, this is our latest update on the spaghetti models that just came in literally about a minute ago. So that's our latest update on this. Again, they are still pretty much on the same line with what we saw at the 18Z. Let me actually bring the other one up for comparison. This is the 18Z in comparison to now. I don't think they've actually changed a whole lot. Yeah, they've very minorly changed. This is the 18Z run. So we had a few computer models over there. We still do. And then here's the latest update. They've shifted a bit further to the east. So again, another shift to the east in the latest runs from the computer models. So something to keep in mind there. Again, that is our latest update. We do have a shift to the east again by not a whole lot, but a little bit in the latest run. So we're still seemingly probably more likely than not to have this landfall somewhere between West Florida. So from Tampa back up through Big Bend. Let me go back over to the other update. This is the intensity update. And not a whole lot to be noted here other than the computer models are still bringing this up to a category 3 to a low-end category 4 level. That's really with most of the consistent and accurate computer models, they're still bringing it up to that level. Other than that, not a whole lot of major changes. The only change that I see with this is that a couple of them bring it a smidge higher, maybe like a couple of miles per hour higher than last time. So we are still seeing that. But other than that, no huge changes in the latest model runs. So that's at least, I don't know how that would really be good news or bad news. Really the best case scenario for the system at this point, I know people want this just to entirely miss Florida, but really the best case scenario for this system, and there really isn't a whole lot of a best case scenario, but let me go back over to let's go over to here. But back onto this still. Really the best case scenario though is that this goes up here closer to the Florida Panhandle because there's more shear. It will be a much weaker landfall. If it goes towards Tampa, again, it could still remain pretty strong as maybe a category 2 or 3 hurricane because there's really no shear there. But again, back up in the Florida Panhandle, back near Panama City, for example, there's a lot more wind shear. That will weaken this probably down to a category 1 hurricane upon landfall in comparison to a category 2 or 3 on the West Coast. So that's what we're looking at as of right now. But again, the National Hurricane Center's forecast as of right now brings it down to a category 1 upon landfall up in the Big Bend. But I would expect in the next update, by the way, from at least the 11 p.m. National Hurricane Center update, I'm not sure what they'll do for the track and the cone of uncertainty, but I do think it will shrink a little bit. I don't think it will include that far west in the Florida Panhandle. I do think that'll be kind of excluded here pretty soon, but that's just my thinking at this point. Again, I don't know what they'll do, but that would be kind of reasonable to me. I think the best chance, at least for landfall, will be somewhere around here at this point, but we'll have to wait and see what happens in the next update. Again, that comes out in an hour and a half, I think. So let's take a look. Yeah, about an hour and a half. Let's go back over to here. Let's go to this. Put it back on this. I don't typically use this, but it's kind of a little cool look at it. All right, back to chat questions. Sorry, I haven't been able to answer every single question, but I'm trying to answer as many as possible. So again, if you're just tuning in, feel free to pop a question in the chat. Again, hit the like button and subscribe, by the way, if you've not already. Make sure to subscribe, by the way. I'm going to be doing a lot of live coverages this week. Tonight is the first one. We'll have another one tomorrow night, and we might even have another one going into Wednesday and Thursday. I might even do a 12-hour live stream, so... All right, let's go back over here. I heard schools and others will be done Monday if closed. Have they announced any school closings in Florida yet? In terms of at least like colleges and universities, have they announced any of those? I don't know about regular public schools, but because at least at this point, I know that mine has not been canceled yet, but we'll see what happens. Because again, for those that are wondering, I am in Florida right now. I'm covering the storm that's coming right towards me. So it'll be pretty interesting to see what happens. Again, I'm you know, from a meteorology standpoint, I'm a little bit excited to see my first ever, you know, potential hurricane. But obviously, the impacts and the devastation that's going to bring is just, you know, it far outweighs that, you know, first experience. Because, you know, whenever you see your first tornado, for example, it's cool. I've never done it before, so I can't even give my experience on that. But hurricanes, obviously, very devastating. Really, I'm hoping for the best that this just weakens over the Gulf of Mexico, but at this point, it just seems very unlikely unless it goes up into the northern Gulf of Mexico, which is a possibility. But this is not my first hurricane forecast. This is my first potential experience with an actual hurricane. I've never been in the track of one before. I think the only one that I've ever experienced may have been I don't know if it was Sandy. I can't remember what storm it was, but I experienced a tropical storm before. But that was it. I've not experienced a hurricane yet. I haven't been in Florida for that long, so. UCFS? Okay, thank you. USV, why can't I say anything? USF Hillsborough schools. Okay, thank you, Jay. Okay, so we do have a few schools it seems like closed now in Florida. So yeah, I would expect mine will get closed for a few days, but we'll see. Am I worried? No, I'm not worried. I'm prepared. Yeah, just gotta be prepared in these sort of scenarios for any of these, you know, tropical storms or hurricanes. And a lot of people in Florida are probably pretty aware of that. Just be prepared, especially again if you're anywhere along the West Coast or even along the Florida Panhandle. Just be prepared for this. And anywhere in Central Florida, anywhere really in Florida in general, you should be prepared. Southern Georgia, have a plan in place, that sort of thing at this point. Because again, the track is still uncertain, but it seems like we're getting a bit more of a likelihood it'll make landfall from the Big Bend back through Western Florida, so maybe near Tampa. So that's kind of the range at this point. Let me go back over to here. So again, this is kind of my range at this point that I'm thinking it'll probably make landfall between. It probably will be somewhere in this region here is kind of my thinking. Again, that's just my thinking as of right now. So from about Tallahassee back through about Sarasota. So a little bit less included here out here in the west. So this no longer included. This really not really included. So that's my thinking from the potential where it might make landfall. Again, the further north it makes landfall, especially if it was back up here near Panama City, it might be a little bit better just due to the fact the shear will be stronger, meaning wind speeds will be lesser up there. So keep that in mind. By the way, if you're just tuning in, we do now have tropical storm watches in effect for the Florida Keys. It only includes Key West. It does not include, I don't think, Marathon yet, just west of Marathon. So that has been issued, I think, a few hours ago. So if you're tuning in from the Keys, you do have a tropical storm watch. Storm surge is currently forecasted to be between 1 to 3 feet as of right now. Thank you, by the way, for everybody that has been subscribing. Again, I'm not going to be able to read every name tonight, but if you have not already, we're only 12 subscribers from 18,000. Again, we'll be doing live streams every night, keeping you safe and keeping you updated with the latest information, so make sure to hit the subscribe button. I plan to have another one tomorrow night around the same time, so I'll be live again until about 11 or 12 o'clock tonight Eastern time. The next National Hurricane Center advisory comes out in about an hour and 27 minutes. Is there another storm behind Ian? No. There's really nothing forecasted behind Ian. Let me go ahead and show you this real quick. The only other system that's anywhere in the Gulf, or at least in the Atlantic Ocean, is well back out in the central Atlantic. That will not impact the United States. We also have Tropical Storm Gaston, which is also not going to impact the United States. So there's nothing at least forecasted long-term that will be a secondary system, at least in the Gulf of Mexico. Could there be? Possibly, but it seems pretty unlikely right now. At least in the next, 7 to 14 days beyond Ian, there's nothing forecasted. By the way, we do have hurricane warnings in effect for Western Cuba. We also have one for the Western Cayman Islands. So a couple of other warnings there. By the way, hit the like button if you've not already. We have 1,300 people watching. Make sure to hit the like button. Again, if you hit the like button, this gets out to more people. So it'll help out for other people that might be interested in information. Pasco County Public Schools closed Tuesday and Wednesday. Thank you, Maggie. Okay, so Pasco County Public Schools are now closed as well in Florida. Well, Ian hit Pennsylvania. It's a possibility. But overall, impacts will be pretty minimal. Let me figure out where Naples... I live in Florida. I don't even know where Naples, Florida is. I was out along the West Coast. Okay, but I feel like I've been to Naples before. I don't know why. Naples, the only concern, and this is back down around here. I think it's south. Yeah, it's over here. So back just south of Bonita Springs, if I'm saying the name right. So near Interstate 75. This area, the main concern right now would be potentially some gusty winds, maybe around tropical storm force winds, maybe some extreme rainfall, depending on how east this goes, and also the potential for maybe a little bit of storm surge along the coastline. Again, it depends greatly on where this goes. The cone of uncertainty, by the way, let me go and put this in miles. Let's go and do that real quick. The cone of uncertainty from Pensacola almost back through areas like Port Charlotte is almost 400 miles wide. It is a large area. Actually, that is a no, wait, let me fix that. That was not really accurate. Let's go back over to like this, for example. This is the cone of uncertainty from, again, from when it might make landfall back up in like the Big Bend, for example. It's still about 420 miles almost wide in terms of how large this cone of uncertainty is. Now, if we kind of put more perspective closer to Port Charlotte, the cone of uncertainty is still almost 300 miles wide. So it's a large cone still. It really could make landfall anywhere in this area. Now, again, I think the next update will probably start to shift this track further to the east. I do not think this area back out here to the west will be included in the next outlook. I can't rule it out, but I think the odds of this making landfall somewhere along the west coast seems to be greater now than what it was before. So again, just make sure you have your plan in place. No reason to panic, as I mentioned before. Just make sure you're prepared for this storm again as it moves off to the north. And again, a lot of convection's coming out of the system. This is back down near Tropical Storm Ian as of right now. There's again a lot of convection as of right now. We're going to continue again to see that development here over the next 24 to 48 hours. It will eventually become a major hurricane. I believe it was forecasted by the National Hurricane Center around Tuesday. And yeah, we're currently right now about early to mid Tuesday. It'll be becoming a major hurricane, most likely around category 3 level back up near Cuba. Beyond that, it might become a category 4 west of Florida. So that's what we're looking at as of right now. All right, let me back over to here. Yeah, but I'm in the track of this storm, so we'll see what happens. Again, if you're in Florida right now and you want some ideas on what you can at least start preparing for, get bottles of water, that sort of thing, perishable food and whatnot. Get things that, you know, if you were to have no power for several days, you can use, you know, that sort of thing. Have a generator. You know, I have one. I had to, you know, make sure it works too. Some people don't know if their generator works because they haven't touched it in like 3 years. Make sure it works, because you don't want a generator during a tropical storm or hurricane that just doesn't work. So that's why I at least recommend as of right now. For those in Florida, again, this again, I'll look at the track as of right now. We'll go ahead and put a different track on here in a second. Again, the big uncertainty right now for Tampa is if the system goes... Let me actually, I think I got the spaghetti models on here too. This is a bunch of lines. They're not overly bold, so it's gonna be kind of hard to see. I'll put a different graphic up here in a second, but this is just an idea of where this might go. Again, the computer models range from Tampa all the way back up now through about Panama City. That's the area of where this might make landfall, so it's still a large area. But Tampa, for example, if it were to make landfall in Tampa, this is basically worst case scenario at this point. If it were to make landfall around Tampa or Sarasota, it could potentially bring the, you know, the potential for hurricane force winds around category 1 or category 2 levels, maybe even as large as a category 3 levels, but I think that's kind of a little bit of an overestimate right now, but somewhere between that. So maybe some gusty winds up to 110 miles per hour would probably be around the peak in Tampa, I would say, if it made landfall there. Again, the shear is much greater up here, so if it were to make landfall back up in the Big Bend, it would probably be around, you know, 50 to 60, maybe 70 miles per hour, or probably, sorry, about 70 to 90 miles per hour upon landfall back up in the Big Bend. Back near Tampa, though, again, wind speeds would be much higher due to there being really no shear to weaken this system. Flooding rains, if it were to make landfall back over in Tampa, for example, so if the track of the storm, for example, would be this white line that I'm drawing here, rainfall totals could very well be between 10 to 15 inches in isolated spots along the west coast, in comparison to back up here where they very well could be kind of like the same range. Now, if it were to go up in this direction, Tampa might only see 3 to 4 inches of rain. So it's just a big difference depending on where this system tracks. If it goes further to the west, that means much less rainfall for Tampa and obviously a lot less impacts. If it goes further to the east, so Tampa, for example, much greater impacts are expected there. That's really where we're at this point. Again, a large bubble of uncertainty. Again, it's about 300 to 400 miles wide right now upon landfall. So that's what we're looking at is right now. Let me take that off real quick. Let's just go back to this. Kind of a little cool look at it right now. Let me go back a little bit more. There we go. So a little bit of an angle at it. So again, if you're in Atlanta, I saw that question asked in chat. So if you're in Atlanta, Georgia, flooding rains would be my only concern, but it will probably not be that significant. So only thing I would prepare for if you're in Atlanta would at least be that potential for maybe some heavy rains, isolated flash flooding. Really my only concern up there right now. But again, we still have a lot of time in between now and when this even gets to Florida. It's still about another 3 to 4 days right now. Really about 4 to 5 days until it makes landfall. So it's still kind of far out. We still have a lot of uncertainty. A lot of things will be changing over the next 24 to 48 hours. So again, we'll keep you updated with the latest information. Again, if you're just tuning in for the first time, hit the subscribe button. Again, we will be keeping you updated here on YouTube with the latest, and we'll be doing a lot of live streams throughout the week covering the storm, by the way. Also, if you're in chat and you want to join our Discord server, it'll be posted by Nightbot in the chat. All right, let me get some other questions. Again, there's a lot of questions in here, so if I do not get to yours, I do apologize. Feel free to comment on a video or even on this live stream afterwards, and I'll try to get to it as well if I don't get to it in this live stream. But again, I'll be live for probably about another 2 to 3 hours, so. All right, let's see. Yes, the Big Bend is like, it's kind of in this area. I didn't actually know this until tonight because, funny enough, I live in Florida. I don't even know this. But back over here, this is about the Big Bend. It's kind of where it bends here. So like Tallahassee area, that's like the Big Bend, I think, right? It's like Tallahassee kind of in this area. It's like the Big Bend. It's like this. West of Gainesville, west of Interstate 75. If not, please correct me, but I think that's what it is. Let me back over to here. All right, let's back over to chat real quick. Again, just make sure you're prepared. If you're in Florida, no reason to panic. I've said it 1,000 times, but there's really no reason to panic. Just have a plan in place. You know, make sure you have a plan in place, that sort of thing. It's really crucial at this point that you have something at least prepared if this system does end up making landfall in Florida, which it probably will. I mean, it's almost 95% chance it will make landfall somewhere in Florida, but obviously the where it does is still a big question mark. So just make sure you have a plan in place. Orlando's actually a good question. Let me go back over to my forecast graphics. It's going to pull up the wind speeds and whatnot. Let's go back over to... So again, these are computer models, so it's not an actual forecast. It's just to give you an idea of basically what might happen in different scenarios. So the European model, as I mentioned before, is the system, or at least the model that is indicating this will go kind of in this direction. So this is like the eye of the storm. That's what the European model at this point is kind of showing. So you can see over the long term, this is the wind gusts on the coastline and whatnot. So this is by about Wednesday afternoon. Wind gusts could already be as high as 60 miles per hour near Sarasota, maybe even Cape Coral, back through Tampa. Eventually going to late Wednesday into Thursday, they might get closer to 80 to 90 miles per hour. And again, it depends on how far east this goes. Again, it's not a forecast. This is a possibility with one of the computer models, though. This is just something to kind of keep in mind. It's definitely a realistic scenario that we could see. Eventually going to Thursday morning, winds potentially around 45 to 50 in Orlando. Again, that might be slightly higher or lower depending on where this goes. Back near the coastline, again, we're still seeing wind gusts just off the coast, for example, around 100 to 110 miles per hour. Back near Tampa and whatnot, they're closer to about 80 at the peak. Tuesday afternoon, or Thursday afternoon, excuse me, into about Thursday evening, we'll eventually see again Orlando maybe around 50 miles per hour at the most. Eventually makes landfall sometime late Thursday into Friday, and eventually going to Friday, winds will start to dwindle probably late Friday into Saturday. And going to Saturday, it will probably dry out. You can see the wind gusts are nowhere near what they'll be during the weekend, so, or at least during the late week, excuse me. So that's what we're looking at is right now. But again, one computer model, it's definitely something to keep in mind though, because this is a realistic scenario. All these are really realistic scenarios at this point. There's really no right or wrong right now long term with any of these computer models. It's just which one's going to be more accurate, because the GFS model, for example, or this is the NAM model, for example, it shows a pretty similar scenario, kind of close to the west coast, but wind gusts obviously a little bit less, but I don't think it'll be this low. I think it'll be a little bit higher than that. This is the NAM model. I don't use it a whole lot. Let's go back to the GFS model. This is the most recent run with the GFS model, so again, it gives you an idea. If it goes a bit further west and stays a little bit further west off the coast of Tampa, wind gusts might be closer to 40 to 50, for example, maybe even closer to 60 to 70 at the peak. Orlando, only 25, and if it continues to go on this northerly track towards the Big Bend, the overall intensity of this, again, will be much lower. Category 1 level at the very most likely, if it goes up closer to Tallahassee. But eventually going to Friday, you can again see the winds start to dwindle going to Saturday and whatnot, but wind speeds will be a lot less, again, if it goes up that direction in comparison if it were to make landfall in Tampa. I've said that a few times, but... And let's go back over to this real quick. I'll put it on the tropics, and let's go over the computer models. Again, this was the second to latest run on the spaghetti models, if you want to call it that. This is the most recent run, and let's go ahead and center a little bit more like this. So this is a look at the spaghetti models. If you're not overly familiar with this is the different potentials with every computer model on where the eye of this storm may go. Again, it ranges from about the Panama City area back through about Sarasota. That's kind of the range on where the eye of the storm may go. Again, a lot of computer models either bring it into Tampa, or they either bring it into areas like the Panama City and the Big Bend. It's still a pretty wide range right now, and I've said it a few times, but it's still a very large area that we can see the system go. So again, it very well varies from computer model to computer model. The European model has been the most consistent with bringing it somewhere here along the west coast. So again, it's probably in the next 24 hours, I'd say, would have a better idea of what we're going to expect with really where it might make landfall. Because again, it's still a very large area. It's about 400 miles or so from landfall. This is about 400 miles or so from about Orlando back through about Panama City. That's about a 400-mile diameter that we're still looking at with where this might actually make landfall. So it's still a very large area. And also, back over to the storm surge real quick. For those that are in the Keys, again, there is now a tropical storm watch in effect for the Florida Keys. This might get upgraded, but as of right now, storm surge is forecasted to be up to 3 feet. But again, it probably will get upgraded as we get closer. But again, anywhere from about Key West back through about Card Sound Bridge is the area that there might be some storm surge. And obviously, anywhere along the west coast has a very good chance of that, but that's not yet forecasted. But that's what we're looking at as of right now. Thank you, by the way, Matthew, for the $5 super chat. I appreciate that. In your opinion, what are the highest sustained winds north of Tampa around Land O'Lakes in the worst case scenario? Worst case scenario for north of Tampa is right around maybe 100 miles per hour. But again, that is the worst case scenario as of right now. But obviously, once we get closer, it might be different. All right, let me back over to here. If no one wants Ian, you can send it to Dallas. Yeah, North Texas has been struggling with rain recently. It's been very dry. If you're from North Texas, it has been very dry. I'm pretty sure there's no rain actually being forecasted in the next several days. By the way, just an update. This may be coming hurricane overnight tonight. It's currently at sustained winds around 60 miles per hour. Let's go hop back into the eye a little bit. So this is a look at the in-depth area of the storm right now. Again, this is currently Tropical Storm Ian. Sustained winds are at 60 miles per hour. It may go up, though, to, again, a potential hurricane within the next 12 hours. It might even go to that in our next update. I'm not sure when I'm pretty sure the hunters are out there again, so we might get an update, excuse me, on the wind speeds at some point tonight. So, again, I'll be live for at least the next couple of hours or so. But I do think this will probably get upgraded potentially to a Category 1 hurricane, either overnight tonight or into tomorrow morning. Again, sustained winds have increased by 15 miles per hour from our last update. The pressure is also down by 12. It was at 1,003. It's now down to 991. Storms are now blowing up, and wind speed again, or the direction as of right now, is northwest at about 15 miles per hour. Again, it'll be a major hurricane eventually going to Cuba. It will probably become a Category 4 hurricane in the west, or about the southern Gulf of Mexico. So again, just north of Cuba, and eventually it'll start to weaken a little bit as it gets closer to the coastline. So that's what we're looking at again as of right now, as the system continues to move off to the north and north over the next few days. All right, let's go back over to this, zoom out a little bit. All right, let's get to chat again. Thank you, Matthew, again for the $2 super chat. I appreciate that. Thank you. What's the likelihood of Pensacola? Thank you, by the way, DK, for the $10 super chat. As of right now, the likelihood for Pensacola is low. It's not that high for that area. It's actually very low. There might be some rain, maybe some minor tropical impacts up there, but it's not going to be significant. Your thought on the icon model? I think the icon model along with the European model have both been fairly consistent. So usually consistency is the key with tropical systems. Both of them have been very consistent. Therefore, I do think those are probably the best chance right now in terms of what we can expect. At least in terms of, like, you know, where this might make landfall. Jim Cantori is currently in... Jim Cantori is literally in Clearwater Beach, Florida, by the way. It's funny. Yeah, Jim Cantori's out there. I know a lot of people from the Weather Channel right now are in Clearwater. So, yeah, again, whenever Jim Cantori comes into your state, you know things are going to get bad. It's kind of a funny meme I've seen. Hoping it hits as a category 1 or 2. Honestly, I would hope it hits as nothing, but unfortunately, there's going to be some sort of level of how bad this might be when it makes landfall. Again, it could be as weak as a low-end category 1 hurricane. It could be as bad as a category 3 hurricane. It just depends on where this goes, because again, the highest wind shear as of right now, when this comes around, it's the highest wind shear is back up here. We got some low-end wind shear back over in this direction, but the highest wind shear again is back up near Pensacola and areas in the panhandle of Florida. Now, the peninsula of Florida, basically areas like Tampa where it might make landfall, the wind shear is a little bit weaker. So if it goes in that direction, it very well probably will still stay pretty strong as a category 2 or 3 hurricane over that direction. Again, it's forecasted to become a category 4 hurricane. That likely will not be that long though. And even then, category 3 hurricane is still very strong. The sustained winds difference here is between 123 miles per hour to 132 miles per hour. 10 miles per hour, it's a difference, but it's not a huge difference. I mean, we're still talking, you know, 9 miles per hour here. And again, 123 miles per hour is definitely still dangerous. Category 2 level around 110 miles per hour, it's still very dangerous. Again, flooding, rain, storm surge, tornado threat, all of that stuff is still very significant with this. We have several threats with this. It's not just winds, and it's not just rain. It's not just storm surge. There's also a tornado potential with this once it gets closer. So again, there's gonna be a lot to cover with this system as it gets closer to Florida. Yeah, tornadoes, possible. I mean, again, there's already a marginal threat for severe weather across, I believe, from just south of Orlando. So I know Miami's included for it on Tuesday. So we already have our first chance for severe weather going to Tuesday. And Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, it just goes up from there. Again, storm surge is going to be greatest along the coastline, which again, very well could vary depending on where this system goes, which again, we don't have an official forecast on either rainfall totals. We don't have an official forecast on the storm surge aside from the Keys, which again, up to 3 feet of storm surge is possible there along the Florida Keys. There is now a tropical storm watch, but I do think that's going to increase as we get closer. So that's what we're looking at as of right now. By the way, if you're just tuning in, make sure again to hit the subscribe button down below. And we'll keep you updated with the latest on everything that you need to know with Tropical Storm Ian, and eventually it'll become a hurricane, most likely overnight tonight. So again, we'll keep you updated with the latest on our channel. Again, almost 1,500 people are watching. Make sure to hit the subscribe button. If every one of you did, we might get to 20,000. So make sure to hit the subscribe button. Again, we'll keep you updated with the latest. We're only 30 likes away from about 500 as well. Make sure to hit the like button. Again, this gets out to more people that way. I hope work gets canceled. Honestly, I've already heard a lot of people saying schools are getting canceled. I think did somebody say CF is canceled, or was that something different? For those that are in Florida, what schools are canceled right now? Can somebody give me a little bit of a rundown? Not every single school, but like, you know, like the bigger ones, like the universities and whatnot. Does anybody have like at least knowledge on that? How far away from the eye does a category 3 winds spread hurricane force winds? Actually, that's a good point. I did not already show this. Thank you, by the way, Matt, again for another $5 super chat. Let me show you this. I did not actually think of this. This is the forecasted wind radius. Okay, this is something I actually have not really ever shown, but this is something that's very interesting. This shows the widespread, you know, area where we could see hurricane force winds and tropical storm force winds. So areas like Sarasota and Cape Coral could eventually see hurricane force wind, or excuse me, tropical storm force winds as early as Wednesday morning. So this just gave you a perspective here. The blue dashed area is tropical storm force winds. That means 39 miles per hour or greater. The purple area is hurricane force winds. That is the potential for 74 mile per hour winds or greater. So again, something to keep in mind here is just west of Tampa, that's where the hurricane force winds are currently forecasted. But again, if the eye goes in this direction, the hurricane force winds could potentially be in a very large area. So that's one thing to just keep in mind there. But other than that, I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Wait, let me double check here. I just want to double check to make sure I'm saying the right thing here. Not sure if this is the... Yeah, that's what we're looking at. So yeah, that's what it is. So just to kind of keep in mind, that's a pretty large radius, by the way. But other than that, back down here, by the way, you can see the wind radius back down here, you know, category 3 hurricane back over Cuba. This is another that pink circle, actually. Let me just double check again. All right, so okay. I've never used this before. This is just a mistake, but okay, just to update you. So the blue outlined area is still tropical storm force winds. Now this area, the purple area, I'm pretty sure 60-mile-per-hour winds or greater. Let me double check on that. Okay, so yeah, that's what it is. So 60-mile-per-hour winds or greater is in that purple area. There's no current forecast for some reason on here showing the hurricane force winds, which is this pink area. So just to kind of clarify there, so the purple area is our worst winds. I apologize about that, but that's our worst winds at this point in terms of the system. The blue area, though, is still representing tropical storm force winds, which at this current time, which this will probably change, this current time as of right now, it is indicative that we'll probably see as early as Wednesday morning seeing tropical storm force winds along areas like Cape Coral back through Tampa. Then eventually going to Wednesday afternoon, that spreads as far east as Orlando going into Wednesday afternoon. And the system will by then will still be well off the coastline. So that's really what we're looking at as of right now. Again, we might see, again, if the track goes out in this direction like that, we'll probably see at least high-end tropical storm force winds in this area by late Wednesday into Thursday. But again, it's going to depend on the track. Again, the area of uncertainty right now is so large. I mean, again, it's 400 miles wide, anywhere from, again, the Florida Panhandle back through about Sarasota and even down, I believe, closer to Naples almost now, just north of Naples near Cape Coral is basically the cone of uncertainty. But again, this will be refined in the next hour. Next National Hurricane Center update does come out in 1 hour from now. So we'll keep you updated with the latest on that. And this is the current wind radius, by the way. So this is back down near the eye of the storm right now. This is, again, Tropical Storm Ian. So a little wind radius. It's not anything too crazy, though, right now, because, again, there's no land here. Cayman Islands, though, again, are currently under a hurricane warning, at least the Western Islands. Other than that, there's a tropical storm watch just out in the Eastern Islands. So that's what we're looking at as of right now. Back over to here. Let's do that. All right, I'm back over to chat. All right, sorry. Let me take a look at what you guys said in terms of schools and whatnot. All right, USF has been canceled. All right, Hillsborough County schools are canceled. Thank you. Okay, so those are at least the known ones that we know right now. So USF in northern Tampa, that's the North Tampa school, is closed until Thursday. It might be longer, though, or probably will be longer if it makes landfall there. I'm honestly surprised my school hasn't been canceled yet. I'm not going to lie, but never know. Thank you, Tom Brady, by the way, for subscribing. No way. No, it's a fake, by the way. Appreciate everybody, by the way, subscribing. Again, I'm not going to be able to get to every subscriber notification, but I do appreciate it. Yours more accurate than the GFS. I would pretty much say that's very accurate. Yeah, the GFS model has not been very accurate this season. It's been very inaccurate, to say the least. That's why I typically go with the European model for most stuff. I will be central and western Florida. Yeah, that's the big thing. Honestly, again, next outlook comes out in about an hour, next advisory. I do think really the area of where this might make landfall, and I've said it a few times, but I think it's going to be somewhere in this area. I don't think it's going to be this far west, as I mentioned before. Again, just from about Panama City through Tampa is really the reasonable area that I think this might make landfall. So yeah, that's my thinking as of right now. Again, you don't have to go with it. That's my forecast at this point in terms of where I think it will make landfall. It seems most likely at this point in terms of where we might see this go. Again, from Tampa back up through about Panama City is probably the best range that you can get from where the eye of the storm will make landfall. Again, even if it makes landfall in Tampa and you're back up here in Panama City, you will probably still see some sort of impacts. And if you're and vice versa. If you're back up in Panama City and it makes landfall there, you'll probably still see some impacts on the west coast of Florida and even really anywhere in Florida. So there's still a very wide range here where we could still see some impacts, again, from Cape Coral back up through the Panhandle of Florida. So that's what we're looking at as of right now. All right, let's go back over to here. By the way, if you have any questions, feel free to leave those in the chat. I'll try to get to them. Thank you, Matt, again for another $5 super chat. I appreciate that. What do you think the timeline will be for North Tampa area? Well, if it goes directly towards Tampa, it might make landfall as early as Wednesday. So like late Wednesday, maybe into Thursday. It's kind of in that range. So maybe like late Wednesday night or into Thursday morning, sort of in that time frame. It might make landfall if it goes towards Tampa. but it could make landfall if it goes up to the Big Bend. It might make landfall sometime around late Thursday night into Friday morning. So there's two different scenarios here. Again, it depends on where this tracks, because if we see a track more like this, it'll probably make landfall sometime around, give or take, again, late Wednesday or Thursday morning. Thursday seems a bit more realistic right now. But if it goes towards the Big Bend, again, it might make landfall sometime around early Friday. So, yeah, big difference either way. We're still looking at a very large area here that we still have an uncertainty bubble of. And obviously, you know, it's still in the area right now. I think it'll get excluded in the next outlook. But if it were to go up here, for example, it might make landfall late Friday. So it just depends on the track. But I do think, again, it's probably going to make landfall on the West Coast or in the Big Bend. One of those two regions in Florida will probably see the landfall. At least that's my thinking as of right now. GFS has been pretty accurate from the storm. I can't agree with that. So unless it actually happens, but I don't think it will. The GFS model has been correcting over the last 24 hours. It was originally showing it would make landfall back up near Panama City, and that was kind of consistent for about 24 hours. Now, the most recent model run is showing it'll do something a bit more like this, and that's what the European model is doing now. So the likelihood, again, this is kind of more like the GFS. It's just like west of Florida, or west of Tampa. That's what the GFS model is showing now. The European model is also showing something pretty similar, slightly further to the east. Actually, let me go and bring up the computer models again. Let's go back over to here. I'm going to show you guys what I'm talking about, so I don't have to draw lines. Let's go over to this. All right, so this is a look at the European model. This is the latest run. Again, this is just a computer model. It's not a forecast. But eventually going through Wednesday into Thursday, again, it makes landfall potentially just west of Tampa, but obviously it kind of flirts a bit with the west coast of Florida. That's what's at least what the European model is trying to indicate what will happen. Then the GFS model, on the other hand, which let me go and bring up the GFS model's recent run. Just gotta bring it up. There we go. So this is the GFS model's run, and the latest run still shows it about probably about 50 to 100 miles a bit further to the west of Tampa. And then eventually it starts to go up closer to the Big Bend and makes landfall up there. So they have become more unison in the last about couple of model runs. Now, if we go back to like yesterday, for example, this is like Friday night, which is not yesterday. The GFS model was kind of showing something similar, kind of flirt and go into the, you know, the Big Bend area. And this is late, or this is mid-Saturday. And this is what I was talking about. So the GFS model was showing that it would go literally right into Panama City, if not even further west than that. So it's been kind of all over the place with this system. So that's what I'm kind of saying. I think the European model has been more accurate overall at this point. And obviously time will tell if it's actually been accurate or if it's just been over-emphasizing going east. But I personally think with how the trough is set up back up in the north. So here's a look at the jet stream. And this is a look, again, the jet stream's here. The system will likely track along this jet stream in kind of this direction. That's my thinking. But obviously the jet stream will eventually start to shift off to the east and weaken a little bit. So it might even go a little bit more in this direction up towards like Virginia and whatnot. But regardless, it's not going to make a big difference. Only difference would be if it goes out in the Atlantic Ocean, it might become stronger. But at this point, I do think that if it goes in this track like the European model is currently showing, it has a better potential at this point for going inland. And really, either of them do. But European model, again, I think is going to be more accurate. Again, the jet stream has a big play in this. So jet stream is really what's going to steer the system one direction or another. The jet stream is going to be a big factor for sure. And it has been. Jet stream is really the big difference. And the GFS model has not really picked up on that jet stream nearly as much. The word tornado actually used to be banned in meteorology before 1950. I didn't even know that. Was it really? Welcome back, Moxie. How you doing? Thank you, by the way. Appreciate it. Thank you guys, everybody, for tuning in, by the way. I know a lot of you guys are new viewers. I appreciate it. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to leave those in the chat. I know a lot of you guys are new here, but again, we're going to be doing tropical updates basically every evening, so throughout the week. But again, we'll be live for another hour or two. We'll be live here for a pretty good amount of time. So again, I'll try to get to as many questions as I can. The chances of me getting to every single one of them, though, is very slim. What's the chance of ABC Islands getting hit? What's the ABC Islands? Is it just me or have I never heard of those? I learned a lot, by the way, in the tropics. I've actually never done a full live stream on the tropics before, other than the United States. So this is the first time I've been a little bit further out. Why is the icon model showing a southern landfall near Cape Coral? I wouldn't put all your, money or whatever on one computer model. Don't put everything on one, because they all vary. I mean, again, computer models have really been all over the place. I've seen some computer models just in the latest run go as far east as over here, and some go way over here. It just depends on how accurate they are. And again, the Icon model is not horribly inaccurate. It's actually a pretty decent model, but again, the range varies all across. I mean, if you look at the GFS model, for example, it was back up here 24 hours ago. Now it's over here. So again, don't get too caught up in the models, because again, they might change, and they have been changing again over the last like 72 hours. They've been changing pretty drastically. They've gone further west, they've gone further east, they've gone kind of back and forth at this point. So I would, again, put everything on one computer model at this point, because a lot of people do that. I mean, a lot of people will say, I'm going to use the GFS model for this forecast, and it wasn't even right, like that sort of thing. So thank you, Matt, again, for another $5 super chat. Thank you for another $2 super chat. I appreciate it. I need to tell people about notifications. I don't need to tell anybody about. I don't really care. People can turn off notifications if they want. I don't really care too much. But if you do want to watch my live stream coverage again tomorrow night, by the way, and if you are new here, click the bell icon down below so you get notified when I go live. I think a lot of people are confused on how it weakens as it goes along the coast. Yeah, sure. So I've kind of said it a few times, but basically, so how it weakens with, at least, I'm pretty sure you're talking about at least up here, right? I'm assuming that's what you mean. So back up in the northern Gulf of Mexico, so up in this area, there's a lot more wind shear. And what wind shear does, it can rip storms apart, sometimes entirely. But in this sort of environment, it's going to rip it apart to the extent that it will weaken down to either a category 1 hurricane or somewhere in that range. So if it were to make landfall up in Panama City, it's likely going to weaken down to a category 1 hurricane or so if it makes landfall up here. Now, if it makes landfall back down in Tampa, for example, it probably will not weaken as much due to the fact there's less wind shear, but it will be interacting with more land as it gets closer. So if it kind of flirts with the coast, it will probably still be in the category 2 to 3 stage. But if it goes right in Tampa, for example, which again, the chances of that are still kind of really all over the place. But if it were to go right into Tampa as a scenario, it would probably be stronger as maybe a category 2 or 3 hurricane due to the fact, again, there's not much wind shear in this area, which wind shear is going to play a big part in if this does go up in the northern Gulf of Mexico. If it doesn't, though, again, it's a bit of a different story. But yeah, that's what we're looking at right now. There's not a whole lot of wind shear down here along the west coast. There just isn't. So there was a hurricane a few years ago and models were wrong. Yeah, again, don't put everything on computer models. They can be accurate. Again, they really can. They can be very accurate in some instances. The European model, again, has been very, very consistent over the last 5 days or so. I mean, it's been very consistent. So the odds of it being pretty accurate at this point and pretty spot on is definitely higher than what it would be if it weren't to be that consistent. So New England remnants impact, again, it's long term. Once we get a couple more days out, like maybe like, I don't know, by Wednesday or Thursday, there'll be a better idea if this will actually impact New England to any extent, which it probably will to some extent, but it depends on how far east or west this goes. But my only concern right now for New England would be rain. I mean, I'm not really looking at anything beyond that. There actually might be some snow up in southern Canada, actually, on the back end of this system, but like that's really long term. We're not really there yet. What's the current estimated day that's going to impact the Panhandle? If it does make landfall in the Panhandle, it would make landfall sometime around late Thursday into Friday. Impacts, though, could start earlier than that. The current forecast on arrival wind speeds, this is just one of the graphics from the National Hurricane Center. I'll go ahead and show you. This is one of their graphics. It gives you an idea of when tropical storm force winds could arrive to your location. So again, this is like basically the idea. So it might arrive as early as Wednesday morning up in the southern Panhandle, basically back up near Panama City. So, but again, just one little thing to look at here. But outermost areas here have a low chance. Again, it's lower the further east or west you go outside of the middle range. So if you're in like this range, for example, you have the best chance of seeing these wind speeds around that time frame, that at least beginning wise. So but if you're like, for example, back over the Bahamas, it's a very low chance. I think it's like 5% that they pronounce it as on the very far east or west end of this. So but yeah, that's just one of those little things that the National Hurricane Center has for the arrival, at least, of wind speeds. You might see some higher waves and whatnot much earlier than that. It just depends on where you are. GFS model sucks. Okay, that's one way to say it. I don't really think any of these models, quote unquote, stink. Okay, I don't think any of them really do. They all have their different capabilities, and all computer models have their own sort of ways on forecasting different things. They're not all going to forecast, for example, the European model is pretty good at forecasting a lot of things, but, another computer model might only be good at forecasting, for example, snowfall totals, something like that. So all computer models do vary. They all forecast something better than something else. But the GFS model has had its years where it's really accurate. Sometimes it's not, though. Again, it's been very inconsistent, I would say, so far this season. Because again, if you're just tuning in, we were kind of looking at it a few minutes ago, but the GFS model at one point was showing it would kind of track the system back over to here towards the west panhandle, basically. Then in a more recent run, it showed over here near Panama City, and now it's back to square one where it really was at the beginning, back near Tampa. So it's just a very wide range, as I mentioned before. All computer models have been kind of like that. The European model, I've said it a few times, has been very consistent. It hasn't shifted a whole lot. It's been kind of in this box, I would say. It hasn't really shifted a whole lot with its eye. So thank you, Maggie, by the way, for the $10 super chat. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. What can I expect in Daytona Beach? Daytona Beach right now is not going to see anything too crazy. Let me go and show you. So I'll go back to the other screen. Let's go ahead and go back to the, we'll do rainfall totals again, and we'll do the wind gusts again. So, all right, so back over to this. So this is a look at the European model in terms of wind gusts and whatnot. And again, it's just one computer model run. So if it goes closer to Tampa as a landfall, for example, like this, like if it goes closer to Tampa, the likelihood of seeing higher wind speeds along the coast, like Tampa and whatnot, is probably gonna be much higher. We could see wind gusts between 80 to 90 miles per hour. European model kind of floats the eye of the storm. It kind of flirts along the west coast and eventually goes back up to the north. So again, something to keep in mind there. Eventually for areas like Daytona Beach, for example, you can see wind gusts could be as high as 40 to 50 miles per hour. So again, something to keep in mind very well there. And eventually, going closer again, Daytona Beach, potentially wind gusts between 40 to 50, might be even a little bit higher. But looking at the rainfall totals, this is again the European model, which again has been fairly consistent. It shows this is kind of the rainfall totals that we might see. So again, West Coast could see between 10 to 15 inches in isolated spots, Gainesville potentially 10 inches, Jacksonville 8, Daytona 9, but again, it's just one computer model. It's not a forecast. It's not official by any means. We very well, again, if the eye goes further off this direction, the rainfall totals will probably be much higher in this area and much lower out here. So it really well varies at this point. And if you go back over to here, for example, the GFS model has kind of indicated that's going to go further west. Rainfall totals much different. Across much of Florida, it's between 2 to 6 inches, at least in the peninsula. Back over the Panhandle, though, again, it's much higher, potentially 9 to 10 inches. So it just very well varies right now in terms of what to expect. By the way, this is the icon model. I know somebody was actually asking about this. This is the icon model here. Let me just go and refresh this. So this is a look at the icon model on Tropical Tidbits, and you can see that again, it kind of goes closer to like Naples area and Cape Coral, but yeah, it's just one computer model run. It's definitely not anything to panic about. Again, just make sure you're staying safe and make sure you're having that plan in place and being prepared for this, because you very well could see that potential if this does go towards those areas. But yeah, that's kind of long-term thinking as of right now. Let me go over to this real quick. And again, if you're just tuning in for the first time, again, reminder to hit that subscribe button down below. Again, we'll be doing a lot of live coverage over the next several days. If you have any questions, try to leave those in the chat. I'll try to get to them. Thank you, by the way, to Jaws for becoming a 2-month VIP Chaser member. Again, make sure to thank Jaws, or give some claps in the chat for Jaws. That is a huge commitment to our YouTube channel. I appreciate that a lot. Thank you very much. It helps me out a lot. Appreciate your support. Jaws is probably the biggest supporter on our YouTube channel, so appreciate it. What about Kisme? So yeah, anywhere in Orlando area, the main concern right now would be the potential for maybe winds that might get to like the high-end tropical storm level if it makes landfall again closer to Tampa, and maybe some heavy rainfall. So again, potential for some flooding does exist in this area, but again, it's going to depend on what the track is. If it goes closer to Tampa, the potential for tropical storm force winds is much higher, along with the flooding potential. If it goes further west towards Tallahassee, it's again much lower in terms of Orlando. So again, I'll probably have a more specific forecast tomorrow for at least if we get more of a condensed cone. Right now, the cone is still pretty large. It's like 400 miles wide. So let's look at it again. Let's go back over to this angle. Hey, thanks, Robert. Appreciate it. I'm glad you were able to find my channel. I think Central Florida will be affected. When? So Central Florida could get impacted as early as like late Tuesday into Wednesday morning, but the impacts will be greater once we get closer. Basically, the impacts are gonna be pretty minimal, like, you know, late Tuesday night, but they'll get greater going into like Thursday and Friday, depending on when it makes landfall and where. So the highest chance for impacts right now would be between Thursday and Friday. Hey, how you doing, Adam? Welcome. Can Ocala, Florida have storm surge? No. Ocala is pretty far away from the coast. Areas that can have storm surge are typically like right along the coast. Like storm surge is something that happens if you're like, you know, within a couple miles typically, unless you're like along a river or something like that. It can be a little bit different. So, I mean, storm surge typically does not go that far. I mean, isn't Ocala like over here? Yeah, Ocala is like well inland. Yeah, Ocala will not have to deal with storm surge, but flooding is possible, along with the potential for maybe, you know, some potential damaging winds. Other than that, though, we're not looking at something that we're looking at, you know, storm surge. Storm surge is something that happens along the coastline. So, and also, by the way, wave heights are currently estimated to be up to 20 feet, at least out here. So it's at least what the computer models were showing recently. So that's what we're looking at as of right now. We had some severe weather back up in Michigan today. There's a marginal threat of severe weather. I didn't realize it. It's a little marginal threat up there and a slight risk in New England and whatnot, but not a whole lot transpired with that. We need more mods. I didn't expect to have this many viewers, honestly, so. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, Ocala is well inland. If you're inland by, you know, 10 to 15 miles and you're not near like a river of some sort, then you don't have to be concerned at this point about storm surge. The only concerns that you should really have is the flooding potential, the damaging wind potential, and there's also there's gonna be a tornado potential. I'll be honest with you. There's probably gonna be some sort of tornado threat going into Wednesday and Thursday. There is a low end chance for severe weather going into Tuesday. The current threat level right now is a marginal threat around Tampa, Sarasota, Cape Coral, and whatnot. That is for potential, I'm pretty sure for just the low-end tornado potential. There might be like a low-end damaging wind threat as well, but the tornado threat does exist on Tuesday. I think it would be more of a late night threat for those areas. So Tampa, Sarasota, Cape Coral, Port St. Lucie, West Palm Beach, Miami, all included. Key West obviously is going to be included in that as well. Orlando's not currently included with that, but that, again, that's just Tuesday night. Wednesday, this area will probably become a bit larger for that potential for maybe a isolated tornado threat. And again, marginal threat is a low-end threat, so we're not looking at, you know, 10 to 15 tornadoes. So that's not what we're looking at. We're looking at a low-end tornado threat. So nothing to panic about, but again, have a plan in place just in case you do see any storms that are tornado warned, which there's definitely a possibility with how the system does unfold with those outer bands and whatnot. Guys, if anybody's being disrespectful in chat, you're just gonna get banned. So let's all chill. Thank you. Again, I don't know if Shelly's here anymore, but Chicago's just seeing rain, by the way. I just took a look. It's just rain. No severe weather anymore. Thank you, Marty, by the way, for the $20 super chat. I really do appreciate that. Where do you think this will make landfall? So I've kind of said my idea of where this might make landfall. Really, at this point, my kind of thinking on at least the track would probably be somewhere in like kind of what the European model is showing. So it might kind of flirt with the West Coast a little bit and go up and maybe to the Big Bend region. But there's still a lot of uncertainty. What I think, though, is it's going to be probably somewhere along the lines of making landfall back up here in the Big Bend, which would probably be a weaker landfall, but it would bring pretty significant threats still to the West Coast. There's still a possibility that this does go into maybe Tampa as landfall as well. It might even go that far east and make like a small landfall and continue up the coastline a little bit. That's also possible. But that's my thinking. But again, the range is very large. It's still, well, let me put the measurement on here. Let's go ahead and kind of measure this again. So in terms of miles, I mean, we're still talking technically the area where it can make landfall. It's around 350 to 400 miles wide, depending on how you look at it. So it really could make landfall as far west as like Panama City, for example. It might even go a little bit further west than that, but I don't think that's going to happen anymore. So basically, this is kind of my range on where I think it could make landfall. So I think in the next National Hurricane Center's advisory, it will probably get condensed a little bit. No longer probably including west of Panama City. So that's what I'm looking at as of right now. All right, back over to here. Let me take this off real quick. I want to make sure I take the miles off. All right, back over to this, and let's zoom out again. All right, let's go over here. Thank you, Marty, for the $100 super chat. Holy moly. Well, that's life-changing. I appreciate that a lot. Thank you very much, Marty. That's really generous of you. Let's get everybody put some claps in the chat for Marty with a $100 donation. Thank you very much. I really do appreciate that. That is a very large donation. I really do appreciate that, Marty. Thank you very much. Everybody put the clap emoji in the chat. Thank you very much. Let's see. This is my first hurricane. I've been here for 3 years. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of almost the same scenario for me. I mean, I'm in college in Florida, so I'm going to be experiencing potentially my first hurricane. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I've never gone through one before, and I'm slightly excited, but more nervous because you never know what will happen. It's gonna be interesting though. Again, I'm a meteorology student, so there's a bit more to it than just, you know. It's gonna be interesting to see what happens. All right, I saw a question, but I can't figure out where it was. How many miles offshore is the eye going to be? I mean, it depends on what happens. Again, if it were to be offshore, like kind of what I was saying before, the European model was kind of showing it would kind of flirt along the west coast. This is approximately, I think, about 50 miles maybe from Tampa. It's like 50 miles or so. And with that scenario being in mind, you know, the eye wall and whatnot could potentially affect areas right along the coast. So that's kind of the dangerous situation if it were to kind of flirt here along the coast. It could impact a lot of areas here right along the west coast. But if it goes further off to the west, again, there's not going to be a whole lot more of impacts. If it went like towards Panama City, for example, it would not really impact the west coast as much. Like the west coast, like Tampa, Sarasota, Spring Hill, would see probably much lesser impacts overall than, again, if it were to be much closer. So the hope is right now that this will go further off to the north into the northern Gulf where shear will start to weaken it. But the chances, again, of that seem to be fairly low right now. But again, computer models have been kind of indicating each and every way. It could either go towards the Florida Panhandle or it could go towards the west coast. So that's what we're looking at as right now. Thank you, Eddie, by the way, for the $5 super chat. How is DeSoto County looking? Let me go ahead and figure out where that is first. I'm only familiar with about 10 counties in Florida, so I don't know every single one. DeSoto, okay, so that's north of Fort Myers. So main concerns for you right now, again, this is the potential. If it goes towards Tampa, you could potentially get some tropical storm force winds and maybe even a little bit of flooding as well. But again, that's still long-term. Specific impacts are really not yet forecastable. You really can only put skepticism really into it and really optimism, because there's not a whole lot that you can really forecast at this given time in terms of your specific threats. In a day or two from now, once we get a more confined cone of uncertainty, we'll know a lot more about what you potentially could specifically see. Because again, the wind radius and whatnot, like the 3-day outlook, is basically up until about here. So category 4 hurricane is really what we're up to at this point. And then beyond then, there's a lot of uncertainty. If it goes further to the north, it could be a category 1 hurricane. If it goes to the east towards Tampa, which it won't take that exact track, but if it went this direction, it could be maybe like a category 2 or 3. So there's a lot of uncertainty beyond the 3-day outlook. All right, I saw a question again. I kind of wanted to answer it, but let me figure out where that was again. This is not currently a category 4 hurricane. It is forecasted to become a category 4 hurricane just north of Cuba. That's around Tuesday. So it's not too far from now. It's only like 48 hours from now that will be probably up to a category 4. It's going to strengthen really quickly. And it's actually potentially going to become a hurricane overnight tonight. So it's gonna rapidly ramp up. Current forecast by the National Hurricane Center is that it'll become a major hurricane as a category 4 by sometime around Tuesday afternoon, so 2 p.m. By the way, if you're just tuning in, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Again, I'll be doing a lot of live coverage this week. Let me figure out where this question was. I keep missing this question. Oh, there it is. Meteorologists are saying that due to the cold front coming out of Canada and the hurricane winds, there's a chance for tornadoes in New York. That is really not that true. Long term, you really can't forecast that. It's a very long term projection, and a lot of things depend on the next like 5 days for that to ever happen. So I'm not concerned about tornado potential in New York right now. Maybe long term, but it's not something that I'd be concerned about right now. But maybe the next thing to look for up in New York might be that. But again, it's going to depend on what happens over the next few days. Hey, thanks, Tori. I appreciate the $10 super chat. Thank you very much. Appreciate the support. Really do. Thank you very much. What's the current storm surge forecast? Let me go and show you. There is only one that is currently official. There's not really anything else beyond the one official one that we have. This is a look at it. So this is the National Hurricane Center's current storm surge forecast. It only currently includes the Keys, and it's really just the first. It probably will get upgraded to some extent, but currently Key West is currently forecasted to get between 1 to 3 feet of storm surge. Beyond there, there's no current forecast in areas like the west coast of Florida. Now there will be, but it's just too early to forecast that because we need to figure out the track and whatnot. So again, a lot of the things I've kind of mentioned in this forecast or discussion is more of just computer model based stuff. A lot of things, though, could still change, and they're going to change over the next 24 to 48 hours, and more things will become refined, because our current cone is, let me go and kind of draw the cone. This is the cone. I don't know if I can include it on my full screen. Kind of starts like over here. So that's our cone right now that we have of the potential where this might make landfall. And then from there, probably by 2 days from now, it's going to be a bit more confined. So it might be a bit more like this, for example. So it's going to become more reduced is really the term over the next 24 to 48 hours. And we're going to start seeing that. And then we'll be able to forecast a bit more of what we can expect in certain locations. But right now, it's difficult to forecast really anything beyond of just making sure you're getting prepared for the potential for flooding. And again, having a plan in place for when this hurricane, if it does maybe impact you. Again, if you're along the west coast or along anywhere up in Panama City, so along the southern coast there of the Panhandle, you want to make sure you have a plan in place and make sure you're getting prepared now, just in case it does come towards you. Because again, the cone of uncertainty is very large still, and impacts could definitely be felt across all of Florida. So a lot of things to keep in mind. Again, there's a lot of stuff to keep in mind. There's a lot of guides out there, by the way. I don't have a specific guide. Let me try to see if I can find one. Go over to here. So this is a good link. So I'll put a link in chat. It's from the National Hurricane Center. If you want some preparedness guides on what you should do if you're in Florida or even in Georgia, if you're in southern Georgia, make sure to check out that link. So that link is really pretty vital if you're anywhere in the track of this, because again, that will give you an idea of what you can prepare for as this continues to move off to the north and even towards Florida. So also, everybody give some claps in the chat, by the way, for Shelly. Shelly's our only mod. I unfortunately don't have more. Again, I did not expect this many people to be watching tonight, but make sure to give some claps in the chat for Shelly. She does a great job. Will this hit Melbourne, Florida? It won't make a direct impact, but you might see some heavy rains along with potentially some gusty winds. I don't expect anything too crazy though right now for that area. By the way, the next National Hurricane Center's advisory outlook comes out in 30 minutes. So again, we'll be live for that. Big update coming out at about 11 o'clock tonight. Has the 11 p.m. update come out? Nope, 30 minutes. I just said that, sorry. So 30 minutes until we get that. Hey, Weather Freak, how you doing? All right, if you have questions, leave them in the chat now. It's a little bit slower, so I can try to get to them now. Sorry, it's been very fast chat, so see if I can try to get to some of these questions. Should I make this a little bit easier? No, that's fine. All right. So if you're the cone on the screen, pay attention to the updates and get a plan. Exactly. Yeah, if you're in the cone, this cone basically represents where this system might make landfall and where the eye of the storm may go. This does not represent, by the way, the impacts that could be felt outside of this, because we could very well see, again, if the eye of the storm tracks out in this direction, which is possible, the impacts could very well be in this region. So don't think that if you're in Miami, for example, don't think you're completely out of the hook yet. You might actually see some impacts to this. It's not gonna be major. It's not gonna be extreme storm surge or extreme winds or whatever, but you're at least gonna possibly see some sort of impacts if it went in that direction. Now, if it goes out in this direction, for example, you could see some impacts in Pensacola. It's possible, but again, The cone of uncertainty only represents where the eye of the storm could go. So again, it could go from as far west as areas just west of Panama City, basically from just near Pensacola, back through about Cape Coral. That's really our range as of right now where this could make landfall. But again, our next update, which comes out in approximately 30 minutes, will give us an idea of if this cone does get condensed, because I do think it will no longer include areas near Pensacola. I think it's going to shift a bit further east. So that's my thinking as of right now in terms of where this cone might go. Any other areas of tropical development? Yes, there is one. It's this system. It's Invest 99L. I'm not going to really touch much on this, but this system is going to be going off to the northwest. It's not forecasted to impact the United States. We also have Tropical Storm Gaston. That's going to be weakening. Other than that, though, we only have basically Tropical Storm Ian, which is obviously a very significant system that we have to watch closely. It's currently at sustained winds around 60 miles per hour. The pressure is at 990 millibars. It has dropped 12 millibars, by the way. Really, I think over the last 3 to 4 hours. That might get updated here pretty soon as well. And it's moving off to the north and northwest at about 15 miles per hour, just a little bit under that. So that's what we're looking at for the speed as of right now. And again, it's going to be moving quickly, so the extreme rainfall threat is not going to be as significant as what we saw with Puerto Rico and Hurricane Fiona. Because as you know, Hurricane Fiona produced like 20 to 25 inches of rainfall in some areas over there in Puerto Rico. We're not going to see the same scenario with rainfall, but we very well could see some flooding rains between 10 to 15 inches, maybe in a couple of isolated spots higher than that. So yeah, this is a big cone of uncertainty, though. Again, this is a much larger cone of uncertainty than we typically have, just due to the fact there's a lot more factors that go into this forecast in comparison to what we saw, with something like Hurricane Fiona and whatnot. There's a lot more factors. The jet stream is playing a big part into where this goes, which the jet stream, by the way, is back up in Canada, so it's pretty far north. But it'll dip down into like the United States, obviously, going to early next week. Do I think this will affect West Palm Beach? There's a possibility that you see some like minor to maybe a little bit higher than minor threats, but I don't expect significant threats along this part of the coast, but there could be a little bit of isolated storm surge. There'll be possibly some higher waves, some gusty winds potentially, isolated flash flooding, but those threats again seem pretty low. Thank you, Jack, by the way, for the report. So yeah, USF has in Tampa has now canceled classes for the week. So if you're from USF, classes have officially been canceled there, it sounds like, in the Tampa area. So again, universities are beginning to cancel classes and whatnot. I'm pretty sure the only days that I would not have school on would probably be about Wednesday or Thursday. It's my thinking, but we'll see. Because again, I'm actually in Florida right now in college, so we'll see what happens. I might have no school next week too. I'm in Alaska. No, you'll not see any of this in Alaska. Thanks, Betty. I appreciate it. Thank you. By the way, I do apologize. I do talk a little bit fast. I have a lot of things I'm trying to say, so I do apologize if I'm talking a little bit fast for you. I know it's my biggest complaint at this point, but I'm just south of Tampa. Yeah, south of Tampa is an area that we have to watch very closely. Again, anywhere along that west coast, Tampa area, back up through the Big Bend. Again, this is an area that we have to watch closely for not just the landfall, but potentially the highest impacts. But again, I do think that area is going to be really in here of where we see the highest impacts, at least to land in the United States. Which again, Tampa, if it made landfall in Tampa, we're going to see much higher impacts. If it make landfall in Panama City, there'd be a lot lesser impacts than what would happen if it made landfall in Tampa. So how wide is the storm? Well, let's look at it as of right now. It's not too bad. At least with the convection, I'll kind of show you. We don't have satellite imagery, so it's kind of hard to give you an actual number on that. I think the National Hurricane Center has an exact number, but I could be wrong. You kind of go ahead and say it's about 250 to about 300 miles, but the outer bands are a bit further east, so it's I would say about 300 miles maybe, but I'm not entirely sure on the exact radius or the exact diameter, because National Hurricane Center I think may have a number on that, but I might be wrong. But by the way, the convection on Tropical Storm Ian as of right now, all these whites that you're seeing that are blowing up, those are huge thunderstorms that are developing back down here in the Caribbean. So we're definitely seeing an improvement on its overall intensity right now in the Caribbean Sea. And that'll obviously continue as it moves off to the northwest towards Cuba. And again, Cuba's under a hurricane warning, at least areas in western Cuba. There's a tropical storm warning for central Cuba. The Cayman Islands are under a hurricane warning. Jamaica, by the way, is no longer under any warnings or watches. So there will be some rainfall over there. Anything coming to Las Vegas? No. Las Vegas is not going to see anything. At least in terms of this. By the way, again, if you're just tuning in, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. I would appreciate it. Again, we're going to keep you updated throughout this system. Again, I'm going to be live over the next several days, every night pretty much, covering this. As it continues to move off to the north towards Florida, we'll be doing live coverage. So again, I'll try to get to as many questions as you have during those live streams, including this one. I'll be live probably for at least another hour tonight. We're going to get our next National Hurricane Center update at 11 p.m. EST, which is in about 25 minutes or so. They'll have our next National Hurricane Center advisory, which basically will make us know if this cone is going to be condensed at all, if it shifts further to the east or west, what we can expect at this point long term. Will be pretty much out in that next advisory, which again will be in about 25 minutes. So be live for that. Yeah, the entire state of Florida is under a state of emergency. Yeah, that's true. That happened, I think, yesterday, wasn't it? Yeah, Augusta, Georgia could see a little bit of impacts. They will not be that significant. Again, anywhere, really Georgia at this point, overall, you're not going to see, like, you know, hurricane impacts at this point. I mean, you'll probably see tropical storm impacts if you're a bit more inland. If you're closer to southern Georgia, though, this is an area that we have to watch for the potential for maybe some, you know, higher tropical and storm winds, and as well as maybe some flooding threat as well, depending on the track of this. Otherwise, even the, you know, the east coast here, you have to watch that area closely as well. Inland will mainly be rain with gusty winds. That'd be my kind of thinking at this point, at least long term. But again, large cone of uncertainty still. If it goes into Alabama, we're talking, you know, completely different story. If it goes into the Atlantic Ocean, we're talking a completely different story. This is just one track that we're looking at right now. Again, a lot of things can change in between now and then with this system, which is why I keep mentioning, you know, make sure that you are not just trusting one computer model. A lot of things will change again in between now and then. So this again continues to move off to the north and northeast. As of 6/17, apparently there's not been any evacuations in Cuba. I did not even know that. So apparently that's the case there in Cuba. Kind of surprised. Yeah, Cuba, honestly, if you're in Western Cuba, man, there's gonna be some pretty significant impacts there, unfortunately. I would expect so much. I mean, it's gonna most likely become a Category 3 hurricane over Cuba, so maybe potentially a very significant situation there. Unless it pulls an Andrew. I mean, again, there's a lot of uncertainty long term, but what we really do know at this point, it's going to most likely become a Category 3 hurricane somewhere near Cuba. It may get to a brief Category 4 stage, and then eventually from there, it's a question mark of whether it goes towards, you know, again, the west coast near Tampa, or if, again, it goes closer to areas like the Panhandle from Tallahassee and whatnot. So there's a lot of question marks there, as I mentioned before. They very well could make landfall anywhere here in Florida. What we do know, though, as well, is that there's going to be a lot of shear up in here, back up south of Tallahassee, which would weaken this system. If it went into areas like Panama City, it would be a much weaker overall hurricane. It would probably be around a Category 1. If it made landfall in Tampa, it might be a Category 2 or 3. So, again, the wind shear is going to play a big part into this system long term. If it were to go north or either east, you know, that's kind of what we're looking at as of right now. What's the possibility of a slowdown? Slows down. Yeah, it's possible. It won't slow down dramatically, though. I don't expect this to really slow down that much. I think that it's going to kind of stay at a pretty consistent speed. It probably will not be, let me go and see if that actually shows in here. It doesn't show that, but overall speed, it will slow down a little bit as it goes off to the north towards Florida, but it's not going to slow to the point where we're going to see extreme flooding and whatnot. At least I don't think at this point, in terms of my forecast, but we very well could potentially see this, you know, it'll probably stay pretty consistent, I would say, in terms of wind speeds. It's a possibility, though, that high does actually impact this in terms of speed, but I don't think it will impact it that much, in my opinion. Category 1 at 11 p.m. It's possible. I'm kind of going to go and say it's going to be around 70 miles per hour, potentially. Maybe a little bit more than that. It's beginning to get more organized, and there's a lot of convection. Let me go and actually pull up the other radar here. Let's go over to here. Let me go and show you the actual. This is the infrared imagery. It's a little bit more high def, so you can see all the convection that's just developing with this system. Basically, just it's about west of Jamaica. And it's becoming a bit more organized. I wouldn't be surprised if this becomes a hurricane at the 11 p.m. advisory. but it might be close. It would probably be around 70, I would say, at least miles per hour. It might have increased, but we'll see. Again, if it doesn't get to a Category 1 hurricane tonight, it will tomorrow. So that's what we're at least expecting as of right now. All right, I'm back over to here. By the way, if you have any questions, feel free to leave those in the chat. Again, this is a great time to ask questions because I can answer them. The chat is not scrolling at 100 miles per hour. So if you have any questions, feel free to leave those in the chat. I'll try to get to some of them. If you have specific questions about how much rain you might see, that's kind of hard to predict right now. So Elisa, the potential that this is a bit bigger of a storm by the time it gets up there is a bit higher. But yeah, honestly, again, Tampa's probably going to see some pretty significant impacts, I would say, if it goes in that direction closer to Tampa. Wait, 1 second. This is actually a pretty good view of it. I'm not sure if I can actually... This might take a lot of... I have a view of this that's kind of interesting. All right, so this is another view. Let me go back over to here. Oh, actually, I'm already on the screen. I think this shows it. Might be a little bit too big. No, it's too big. Let's go over to this screen. So this is a look at the high def of this system. And this is like a minute-to-minute scan, which is actually kind of interesting. So you can see by minute to minute here, west of Jamaica, that's pretty interesting. Okay, and a lot of convection, a lot of storm activity. It is intensifying, by the way. This is definitely intensifying. You can clearly see it. A lot of storm activity, as I mentioned before. Outer bands as well, starting to see some storm activity. So again, this is definitely intensifying. Again, it's south of Cuba. It's nowhere near Florida right now, but it's definitely an intensifying storm, which is, again, what was forecasted at this point. And again, it might become a Category 3 hurricane as early as potentially Tuesday near Cuba. So that's what we're looking at as of right now. That's a pretty interesting look at it, though. Ethan, no reason to panic, but you might see some wind gusts and maybe some rain, but you're not going to see, you know, hurricane force winds and stuff down that direction. But there's definitely a possibility that you at least see, you know, a little bit of heavy rain and whatnot. Again, a lot of things are still to be determined. No reason to panic. Again, there's really no reason to panic. If you're anywhere in Florida, you should just have a plan in place and make sure you're prepared. Again, go to the National Hurricane Center's website and go to their prep stuff. There's like literally a prep section on their website for hurricanes. You can literally look it up on Google and, you know, you can get all the details that you need to know about how you can prepare for it. There's no reason to panic, though, honestly. Even if you're in Tampa, you do not have to panic. Just have a plan in place and be ready to evacuate if you need to. But if you're in West Palm Beach, I don't expect you need any really reason to evacuate at this point. Unless you're like on the immediate coastline, but even then, I think you'll be fine. Just be prepared. Be prepared is the biggest thing that you can do at this point anywhere in Florida. Because again, the track of this system, again, could go as far west as, let me get a better color here. It could go as far west as potentially Panama City. It could again go as far east as Tampa. Either way, it's a very large cone of uncertainty of where this eye goes. And honestly, if it goes this far to the west, you know, you don't even have to worry about really anything in West Palm Beach. But if you're like, you know, if it goes over this direction, it might be something more to watch. But again, it's a very large cone. So more than anything, just be prepared is really the best advice I can give really to anybody at this point, as this does continue to move off to the north and northeast. Again, the next National Hurricane Center advisory does come out in 20 minutes. So we will keep you updated when that comes out. Again, 20 minutes is when that comes out. So apparently a severe thunderstorm warning in New York City. It was on Long Island. A little storm on Long Island. There's a little severe thunderstorm threat up in northeast today. How long do you expect Ian to last and for how many days? I mean, from now until, I mean, it's probably going to be lasting a pretty long amount of time. I mean, it depends on what you mean by lasting. Because, I mean, it could literally last all the way through, like, New England and whatnot and go into Canada. As, you know, either remnants of Ian or if it's still, you know, the tropical storm or whatever. You know, it's kind of a hard question to answer. But it's probably going to be, I mean, if you're talking about like a hurricane level, I don't foresee this being a hurricane probably past Florida unless it went into the Atlantic Ocean. But I don't think that's going to be that likely. It'll probably be a tropical storm when it makes landfall. And again, remnants would probably be around the East Coast. But again, that's really long term. I'm not going to go too long term on this because there's a lot of uncertainty in the short term. And forecasting with a lot of uncertainty in the short term leads to even more uncertainty in the long term. So North Carolina, the impacts, if you were to see this, that depends on where you are. If you're like inland, it would be mainly just rain, maybe a little bit of gusty winds. It wouldn't be anything that significant. But again, the next advisory at 11 p.m. will probably give us a bigger idea of what we're actually going to see, a little bit more in the long term, at least for Florida. So we'll have that come out pretty soon. What about power outages? Power outages are going to be pretty likely, especially along the coastline. Inland, I can't really give you a good idea. Again, it's a bit more of a forecast long term still, because we are still about 4 to 5 days out from this making landfall in Florida. The one thing I can say, though, if you're along the coastline, you can probably expect power outages if if the actual eye of the storm goes towards you. So again, if it makes landfall in Tampa, there will probably be power outages there. If it goes into Panama City, there might be power outages there. But, you know, if you're talking about Jacksonville, for example, who knows? You know, it's kind of one of those things where it's just too hard to forecast 5 days out. It's more of just really what we're looking at right now in terms of the, you know, discussion and kind of what to see what actually happened. Again, a lot of scenarios right now in terms of what we could see over the next several days. Let me see if the new advisory has gotten issued yet, or we'll take a look. Sometimes they issue it a little bit early, but let's see. Okay, so all right, so just kind of a heads up. So this is a little bit of the discussion that I was talking about with the cone and what might happen. So actually, Dr. Rick Knabb from the Weather Channel, which is just something I mentioned, but the GFS has more ensemble members close to the peninsula. So again, there's possibility that the cone gets shrunk a little bit and goes further east. That's a possibility, again, going into the next outlook. So again, if you are interested in the outlook, again, stay tuned. It's going to come out in about 15 minutes, but there's a good chance this does shift east in the next outlook. By the way, storm surge watches and warnings, just a little difference between them. Storm surge watch for life-threatening rising water is 48 hours out, and then 36 hours out is a storm surge warning. But obviously, we're not going to have to worry about that right now. It's more of a long-term thing. By the way, update on Tropical Storm Gaston. It is now a post-tropical cyclone. So, for those that are curious about that. Updated timing graphic, by the way, on winds. Yeah, this is probably going to shift east, by the way. The latest update, it does seem like we're going to see this cone of uncertainty shift east. So stay tuned. It's almost certainly going to shift east. That seems like what we're going to see today. That's what we're at least what I'm getting indications of right now. But by east, this is kind of what I mean. I'm not entirely sure what the cone will be. I don't know yet. Again, it's 15 minutes out. They'll know. Just a little bit of speculation, though, on what might happen. The cone may, again, exclude areas this direction. It may kind of be in this area. That might be kind of where the cone condenses to. It probably won't be this small, but that's my general thinking. It will probably not include as much of the panhandle as it does now. That's what I mean by east. I don't think it's going to shift like this. It's not going to shift that far east, but it's a possibility that this cone does shift a little bit more down to the south and east, or it just excludes portions of the panhandle. One of the two. So it's at least what I'm getting an indication of the latest. But again, it comes out in 15 minutes. We'll keep you updated when that comes out. It might even come out earlier than that. So we'll see what the big shift is, if there is any big shift. But again, while you're at it, if you're just tuning in for the first time, again, friendly reminder to hit the red button down below and subscribe. We are now only 83 subscribers from 18,500. It sounds like a large number, but we're actually not too far from it. Again, hit the subscribe button down below if you're new here. We're going to be going live, again, a lot this week, covering this storm as it continues to move off towards Florida. So we'll be keeping up to update with the live coverage here across Florida and, again, anywhere in the Gulf of Mexico. So also hit the like button, by the way. Make sure hit the like button. Again, it gets out to more people that might be in the track of this. All right, let me take a look and see if we have any other updates coming in. Let me go over to the National Hurricane Center website. I think there actually is an update. They have changed something, but I'm not seeing it updated, at least on my end, yet. There hasn't been any big updates yet. Again, the next update is going to be coming out here in a second. I'm not seeing anything yet. And the next National Hurricane Center advisory for this should come out in probably about 5 to 10 minutes. So keep you updated. But again, it seems like this will probably shift a little bit to the east. The European model shows it stalling for a couple of days. I don't think it shows it stalling, but it kind of shows it'll kind of flirt with the east coast, or west coast, excuse me, of Florida. Let me look at it again. It doesn't really stall. It slows down a little bit, but I don't know. I'll take it for a grain of salt right now, because again, we're still pretty far out, and overall it's, I don't know. I wouldn't buy into it quite yet. If it's stalled like that, that could be dangerous, but the GFS, I honestly, at this point, I think it's going to be going a little bit quicker than what it's showing, at least on the European model, but we'll see. If it flirts like that near Tampa, though, that could be dangerous in terms of wind speeds and whatnot. All right. Yeah, a stalling system would not be something that you want, but again, we're still about 4 or 5 days out. Things can change. I've said it a lot, like, you know, everything I've mentioned in this live stream is really with just a grain of salt, because at least in terms of computer models and stuff, because things will change. They will change as we get closer. Again, this cone is so large, pinpointing a certain area of where this will make landfall is like putting a Plinko chip down a Plinko board. It's like, you know, you have one slot they have to get into and there's like 50 slots. That's how difficult it is at this point in terms of where this might go, because again, there's a lot of areas that this very well could potentially go. Now, again, in the next update at 11 o'clock, which is again about 10 minutes from now, I think the cone will shift a little bit, and it probably will be not including as much of the panhandle as it currently does. But it's again a very optimistic forecast at this point, and even from the National Hurricane Center, I mean, it's very optimistic. That's why they don't have specific rainfall totals and stuff like that for Florida yet, other than past. Basically, they have it up until Tuesday right now. Storm surge forecast is only for the Florida Keys, so there's only tropical storm watches in effect for the Florida Keys. Otherwise, there's no watches or warnings yet along the coastline, which again, it's because it's just a long-term thing, but. I'll keep you updated, Danny. Trust me. Yeah, again, if you're just tuning in, again, I'm going to keep you updated with the latest information on Tropical Storm Ian and potentially Hurricane Ian as well. So, again, if you're just tuning in, hit the subscribe button. As I mentioned before, it's the best way you can stay updated here with the latest information, as well as with the National Hurricane Center. Obviously, they're, you know, make sure you're staying updated with that as well, more than anything. Because I'll probably be going live almost every night this week. I probably will not have a video, though. I'll probably just do nightly live streams with the latest updates. So, my plan as of right now. Let's take a look at Twitter. Again, the advisory has not come out yet. It's about 10 minutes out. So unless they issue it a little bit early, which is possible, see what happens though. Big update though, probably coming in the next update. I think this will be much bigger than what we saw at 5 p.m. I do think the cone is going to shift a little bit east, and it probably not include as much of the panhandle as I mentioned before. Might be apparently there's a severe thunderstorm warning on Long Island near Brookhaven, and there's actually a tight rotation near Ridge. Interesting. It's not too tight. I wouldn't be too concerned about it, but there is definitely a little bit of rotation there. It's near Rocky Point. It's interesting. So on Long Island, New York, it's moving east. All right, let me back over to Twitter. Let's take a look. Also, by the way, we have a video coming in from the tropical storm, by the way. Let's go and pull this up. Let me make sure I'm on the right screen. Yeah, I am. All right, so this is a video that we actually have coming in. This is over in Grand Cayman. So winds are picking up. You can see the trees swaying. So again, this is Tropical Storm Ian over in the Cayman Islands. So winds picking up right now over that direction. That was from, again, the Cayman Islands, which, again, that area is actually under, depending on where they are, I'm pretty sure it's Western Cayman Islands. That's actually under a hurricane warning right now. So there's a hurricane warning for there. There's a hurricane warning for Cuba. That's what we're looking at as right now. Apparently, there's a water spout potentially trying to form north of Rocky Point in Long Island. It's in between Long Island and Connecticut, just off the coast. It's interesting. Shouldn't the University of South Florida be okay? I don't know what this. The university is USF called University of South Florida. Is that what it is in Tampa? Because I know there apparently classes are canceled there. Again, our next National Hurricane Center advisory comes out in approximately 5 minutes. Again, we'll give you the latest details on that. The cone might shift east. Seems like the memo at this point, but we'll keep you posted. All right, so it is University of Southern Florida. That's interesting. Tropical storm watch for Monroe County, Florida. Where's Monroe County? Oh, is that actually just got, did that just get issued? So I don't think it was issued before. All right, so all right, this is the latest update, not the full update yet, but this is an update. Tropical storm Ian has now strengthened. I'm not sure to what. It does not sound like it's a hurricane yet, but it has strengthened in the latest update. But I'm not sure on the wind speed yet. They'll come out here in a second. But that is our latest update. So tropical storm Ian has strengthened. Whether that is from 60 to 65 miles per hour or 60 to 70 miles per hour, whatever it might be, it's kind of to be determined. We'll have that information in a minute. 65 miles per hour, is that what it officially is? I haven't seen the official number yet. Still seeing 60, but obviously it hasn't updated for me. On my end, it has not updated either. All right, so 65 miles per hour. The pressure is at 989 millibars. So it has strengthened a little bit in the last 3 hours. All right, yeah, okay, so now I see it. So latest update, not a whole lot has changed, at least in terms of the intensity as of now. The cone, I'll get to here in a second. That's not updated yet. It'll update here in a second, though. Sustained winds are now up to 65 miles per hour. The pressure is at 989 millibars, so it's dropped about 2 or 3 millibars, if I'm not mistaken. And it's still moving northwest at about 13 miles per hour. That is our latest update. Now, the cone should come out here in a few minutes. It's not out yet, but we'll keep you updated. I think it's moved east. The cone, I think, has moved east, so. Yeah, again, it has strengthened, and you can see, again, the convection is just really increased in the last 12 hours. There's a lot more convection now than what there was, literally 12 hours ago. There's a lot more convection. A lot of these whites, again, are representing a lot more storms more than anything. We're seeing a lot more storm activity develop. It's becoming more organized. It's starting to have a bit more of a more defined circulation. And again, I would not be surprised if this was a hurricane sometime overnight tonight. So that's what we're looking at right now. Again, the cone should be updating here in a few minutes. Yes, this is currently forecasted to become a Category 4 hurricane. Again, that should be well west of Florida. Once it gets closer to Florida, it will probably be around a Category 2 or 3. That's at least what's forecasted as of right now. Again, things might change, but Hillsborough County schools are closed Monday through Thursday. Thank you for the report. Do I think the path will change? I do think the cone will change. Path might change along with that, but yes, I do think the cone is going to shift further east, but again, that's not official information. That's just what I think might happen. Computer models have really been leaning towards a landfall somewhere over here. It does not really include the western panhandle anymore of Florida. So, but again, a lot of computer models are kind of in between this area here. That's basically been the range. So from about Naples, Florida, back up through about Panama City has been kind of the range. The most reliable, or at least most consistent models have been bringing it towards Tampa, which again, who knows? We're still a few days out. Will Miami get hit? Miami will not be significantly impacted, but you might see some, low-end storm surge, or maybe some rain potentially. Really heavy rains would be my main concern there. Maybe some gusty winds along with that. Depends on how far east or west it goes, though. Again, that's kind of a long-term question. Again, I can't really give you specific details other than you might see some heavy rain and whatnot. but depends on how far east or west it goes. All right, let's see if the cone is out. I'm pretty sure the cone is not out yet, but still waiting for that. And we'll keep you posted when that gets out. But again, if you're just tuning in for the first time, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. We're only 34 subscribers away from 18,500. Again, we will keep you updated with the latest information on the tropics pretty much every night. We're gonna be doing live streams like this, and again, I'll be answering your questions and whatnot. So if you have any questions, I'll try to get to them in chat. But there's a lot of questions I had earlier, so I wasn't able to get to all of them. But it shifted east. Still not seeing the updated cone yet. Oh, cone has shifted. Oh, this is a big update. So this is actually an interesting cone update. The line is not updated. All right, here's our big update that I was mentioning before. So this is a pretty big change that we're looking at. Let me go a little bit more into a different look. This has changed pretty substantially. The cone is now still down to Cape Coral or so, but it is a lot thinner through this area. So we're now looking at a much thinner cone. Now, long term, Tampa is now a bit more in line potentially for the system. I would assume the next line is more out to the east. It's slowed down as well in the latest update. So that's what I'm hearing as of right now. I still don't have the exact cone details yet on their website. I'm still waiting for that to update. But that is our latest update. That is a major change to what was before, by the way. And I was mentioning that a lot in the stream, that there's going to be probably some pretty big changes to this. Let's go over to this. All right, so it hasn't updated yet, but here's the okay, so I have a 3-day outlook. Let's go and bring this up. This is a little bit easier to look at just for those that are curious on this. So this is the 3-day outlook. This is not the long-term outlook. This is just over the next 3 days. It is now shifted substantially further to the east. So Tampa is more in line for this now than before. So big change to what we were just looking at before. Again, that's Wednesday night is when a major hurricane could actually be off the coast of Tampa. That is much stronger. That's actually stronger than before as well. But that's the next 3 days. The next 5 days I'm not at yet. I'm at least not seeing it. We do now have tropical storm warnings in effect for the Florida Keys, by the way. So if you know anybody in the Florida Keys, there's now a tropical storm warning there. There's also tropical storm watches that have been in effect or been issued, excuse me, for areas along the southwest coast of Florida. So that's not showing on my end yet, but I'm pretty sure that's like East Naples area through Cape Coral, if I'm not mistaken. Back through basically Marco. So that's an area that I'm pretty sure now has tropical storm watches in effect. So again, a lot of updates here. I'm going to see if I can get the exact track on here. It's not updated on my end completely. I'm not seeing it yet. Let me look at the discussion real quick. All right, so this is the new update on wind speeds, by the way. So basically near Tampa, it's currently forecasted to have wind speeds near 120 miles per hour. Let me go and kind of outline it here. The new update shows at least right now near Tampa, so this is like the next track. It is not updated, by the way. This line is not updated, but it's currently forecasted to be near 120 miles per hour now, just west of Tampa. And eventually, as it moves up here a bit more, it's going to be near 90 miles per hour. And then eventually, it's going to be moving inland around hour 120, which give or take, I'm pretty sure it's about 5 days. So that's what we're looking at as of right now. Now, this line will probably take a while to update, so I'm going to go and see what the National Hurricane Center has. I've not been able to get the cone accurate yet on here. Still in the 8 p.m. update, but check general. Okay, so there. All right, so I have a cone. There we go. So this is a look at the cone. Let me go over to this tab so we have a little bit easier here. Sorry, I've been changing a lot here. So here's basically the big update that we're looking at. It's a massive update in comparison to what we had before. This is likely to be still a major hurricane near Tampa. So again, if you're in Tampa, make sure again you're getting prepared and whatnot. No reason to panic, but just make sure you're prepared. Eventually, by about Thursday night, it will make landfall. Most likely make landfall Thursday night. If it goes further east, it could make landfall earlier. If it goes further west, it can make landfall later. But as of right now, it's most likely going to make landfall north of Tampa, west of Ocala or so, somewhere in those rural areas, kind of near the Big Bend or so. By about Thursday night, 90 mile per hour sustained winds is what's forecasted here. 120 miles per hour is what's forecasted west of Tampa, and again around 130 to 135 miles per hour is going to be possible west of Florida, basically near the Keys. The Keys actually might get upgraded to a hurricane warning. That's possible, at least the Western Keys. By Friday night, it's going to be a tropical storm up here with sustained winds around 45 miles per hour. So that's what's forecasted now in the latest update. Again, this is a very big update because in comparison to before, this cone has shifted substantially further to the east. And I mentioned that, in this live stream, I was expecting this cone was going to shift a lot more to the east, and it has for sure in the short term. Now, long term, it has actually not shifted a whole lot because it's most likely going to slow down a little bit. But in here is where there's still a fairly large cone, and the cone has not really changed a whole lot from west of Panama City back through about Cape Coral. That's pretty much the same, but the short-term track has it much more confined. So it seems like Tampa will probably have some pretty substantial impacts, at least if you're on the west coast. The chances are that it might still go up in this direction, but it's very low. I think the overall chances of this making landfall will probably still be somewhere in here. So Tampa seems like it has the higher likelihood right now, but again, if you're in Tampa, impacts are definitely expected there. Now, just to mention, if you're just tuning in, this line, again, is not updated. It actually just updated. Okay, so we have an updated line. So let's go piece by piece here. So again, Cuba, right around Tuesday afternoon or so, it's going to become a Category 3 hurricane with maximum sustained winds around 115 miles per hour. Wind gusts could be up to 140 miles per hour. That's near Cuba. Eventually, it's going to possibly strengthen into either a strong Category 3 or a low-end Category 4 hurricane with sustained winds around 130 to 135 miles per hour. That would be west of Cape Coral. Wind gusts could get up to 160 miles per hour west of Cape Coral. So that is, again, significant difference in between from what we saw before. And that's just west of Cape Coral. Let me take a look at the distance here. If you're in Cape Coral, by the way, you will not see Category 4 force winds. This is very far to your west, but you might possibly see some high winds. Just to look at the distance, about 116 miles right now forecasted. Again, there's just one little track. There's still a large bubble of uncertainty here. Let me actually put up the wind radius, by the way. This is the forecasted wind radius. So the purple is representing basically 60 mile per hour winds or greater. The blue is representing at least tropical storm force winds over at least a short term. That's actually not updated. Don't look at that. That's not updated yet. Some of these things take a little bit to update. But west of Tampa, by approximately Wednesday or so, about Wednesday night, I'm pretty sure, it'll be just west of Tampa with sustained winds around 120 miles per hour and wind gusts at 150 miles per hour. So again, a major difference from what we saw before. It's much further east, as I said. And then eventually, it's not at least going to make landfall, it seems like, in Tampa, but Tampa will see pretty big impacts, most likely. It might go up in this direction, though, and make landfall somewhere west of Ocala, maybe south, basically west of 19. And then from there, obviously, the cone of uncertainty is still very large on where it makes landfall, but that's what's forecasted, at least as of right now, in terms of possibly the most accurate track, which obviously we're still very far from this system making landfall. So it could really be anywhere from Panama City back through Cape Coral. It's a large area that we're still looking at overall where this could make landfall. Again, we will keep you updated with the latest information. Again, hit the subscribe button down below if you have not already. We're going to be going live pretty much every night tracking the system, but again, major update in comparison to what we saw before. The overall wind radius is not updated yet. Again, when that updates, I will show you, but has not updated yet. Again, the wind radius also, the forecasted wind radius has also shifted east. So obviously hurricane force winds definitely gonna be possible here along the west coast there, possibly near Tampa. So again, big changes from what we saw before. And yeah, I mean, it's massive changes. It's definitely not a minor change, which I actually kind of thought we'd have a little bit of a shift to the east, but not nearly as major as this. This is a pretty big change. But yeah, storm surge is definitely going to be a problem there in Tampa for sure. So let me go back over to the National Hurricane Center's track. I'll go ahead and show you guys again on the latest update. This is a little bit more specific than, well, it's not really specific, more specific, but gives you a little bit more of an idea of what we're looking at here. And at least in terms of timing. So if you're curious about timing on when these impacts could be possible, this is what we're looking at in terms of timing. So again, major hurricane potentially just west of Tampa around late Wednesday. Again, impacts could be felt though much earlier. And from there, the cone of uncertainty is massive still. We're still at a pretty large cone of uncertainty, but the most likely scenario seems to be it'll go somewhere in here and most likely make landfall somewhere from Panama City back through Cape Coral. It's still a very large area, though, that we're still looking at here. So we're looking at this right now in terms of the landfall and whatnot. And big changes. The by the way, tropical storm watches have now officially been issued for Cape Coral, I'm pretty sure, and just south of there. There's now tropical storm warnings in effect for the Keys. That is a new update. I've not really mentioned that, or mentioned that once. There's now a new update there. Here's your look at your system now. But again, big updates in comparison to what we saw before. That's crazy. All right, let me try to get some questions. I know there's a lot of people commenting here. It's a big change, though. Actually, let me see if they have any new forecasts. They typically issue forecasts around this time. They might have forecasts on here, they might not. Storm Surge has been updated. We have a huge update on Storm Surge, by the way. Huge update. This is actually a very large update here that we're talking about with Storm Surge. Let me bring it up. This is actually very crucial that you guys know about this if you're in Southwest Florida. So this is the latest forecast from the National Hurricane Center. This is a big update on the storm surge now. We are potentially going to see up to 7 feet of storm surge here from about Bonita Beach, if I'm saying the name right, back up to Englewood. So this region here now could see up to 7 feet of storm surge. So 4 to 7 feet is what's forecasted as of right now. The Florida Keys have been upgraded to 2 to 4 feet of storm surge. That is another big update. 3 to 5 feet will be possible from about East Cape Sable back through about Bonita Beach. So that's the region that we're currently looking at for 3 to 5 feet of storm surge. 4 to 7 feet is going to be possible just off to the north of there, back up near Englewood. Bonita, thank you. So Bonita Beach back through East Cape Sable. 3 to 5 feet of storm surge now forecasted. Card Sound Bridge through Key West is currently 2 to 4 feet. And then back up through Englewood, 4 to 7 feet. Now, again, areas back up here to the north has not been forecasted yet, but this will probably be pretty high as well. And I think Tampa could potentially see maybe 10 to even possibly higher foot storm surge in that area. So that is our latest outlook, at least in terms of storm surge, which is a big update here across Southwest Florida. Got paid for every time you said the cone of uncertainty. You would be rich. Yeah, I say cone of uncertainty a lot, don't I? Said it actually a lot. Yeah, this is a very serious now upgrade, though, from what we saw before. Again, 4 to 7 feet of storm surge is no joke. And honestly, if you're anywhere in the track of this, and again, the cone does not do a justice to what we might see outside of it, but obviously make sure that you are getting your plan in place if you've not already. I know a lot of people live in Florida, and some people do not take tropical storms or hurricanes as seriously as others. This is something that we do have to really take seriously, especially if you're along the west coast of Florida or anywhere up in the Panhandle. You should really be monitoring this very closely. It's not something you should panic about. Just make sure you are prepared. I can't urge that enough, because I know a lot of people in Florida are probably not going to take this as seriously, but it's something that we really have to take seriously. This is definitely a dangerous system that we're watching right now that's going to be probably moving toward Florida. And again, it's been upgraded at this point, so just west of Tampa we could see this being potentially a category 3 hurricane, really just west of Tampa. So major update there. Again, the track is not, you know, for certain at this point. It might go further east, it might go further west, but this is more accurate than I think what was before. A lot of things have changed in the last 12 to 24 hours. Whew, a lot of talking. All right. The next update after this, the next advisory, it's an intermediate advisory, I think it's called, is at 2 a.m. The next one after that is our 5 a.m. advisory. 5 a.m. and 11 a.m. advisories are typically more updated. They have more stuff with them. The 2 a.m. advisory is typically going to at least include something minimal with, you know, maybe a little change in the intensity or the track, but it's typically a minimal update. We don't typically see a whole lot from the 2 a.m. and, like, I think it's 8 a.m. advisories. Will it move more east? It's definitely possible. Again, this could move further west or east. It's, again, I was kind of mentioning it before the advisory was issued. I expected it to move east, and it very well may move further east. The computer malls, though, there's still a cluster of them going up closer to the Panhandle. There's still a cluster near Tampa. They've basically put the line straight down the middle of basically the two groups of computer malls that are kind of indicating where this might go. Now, granted, there is a couple of computer malls that bring it up in this direction, but overall, they've been kind of split 50-50, either, you know, back up here in the Panhandle or back through Tampa. I still do think the more likelihood scenario is that this goes towards Tampa and the West Coast, but that's just me. That's what I'm thinking, at least at this point. Floridians will only take it seriously when it's a category 4. Even then, I mean, the euro shifted west. No, it didn't. It actually shifted east. It's kind of, I mean, it depends on what you're talking about, because if you're talking about from one time to another, it might have shifted west, but more recently it's been kind of consistent with keeping it flirting with basically flirting with the west coast near Tampa. So this is kind of just to kind of resemble what it kind of looks like. It pretty much looks like this exact line almost. This is basically what the European model's been showing, so it's basically just off the coast of Tampa. It, at one point did show it go like this, though. I mean, one point I'm pretty sure the European model kind of showed it go right across Florida, so which is not seemingly as likely as what it was before. But yeah, the European model's been kind of flirting along the west coast here. Now, there are some computer models like the GFS that have gone from doing something like this to something like this, now back to something over here, you know? So the computer models have been really changing. The European model, as I've said a lot in this live stream, has been overly consistent. It has been the most consistent computer model, I'd say, by far. It has really been very consistent. So consistency typically is, long term, it's typically a bit more accurate overall. All right, let me see what we have for updates on Twitter real quick. All right, so just an update. I've kind of mentioned this a couple of times. There's now a storm surge watch in effect for the Florida Keys and Card Sound Bridge to Key West. So there's now a storm surge watch in effect, by the way. That is a new update. And also, the west coast of Florida from Englewood down to Card Bridge is under a, I'm pretty sure, a tropical storm watch. And then a tropical storm warning is obviously in effect for the Keys. That's our latest updates there. So there's now a storm surge watch actually in effect along the Keys. What's the effects of Category 3? A Category 3 hurricane can bring some significant storm surge, potentially sometimes life-threatening. Typically, it is life-threatening. Depending on how far west it is, obviously, that's kind of to be determined. But yeah, overall, storm surge is a big concern. Potentially some flooding, which really any of these tropical systems can bring flooding depending on how fast it's going. Damaging winds, big concern as well. But a lot of people think there's just... And also tornadoes, by the way. So... Hey Fish, how you doing? Who are you? Which one? There's a lot of people in the broadcasting class. Yeah, this is a pretty substantial update, though, to say the least. So the risks for Tallahassee. Again, I can't give specific risks that long term. Really just be prepared for any threat of, you know, what a hurricane could potentially bring. So storm surge, well, obviously Tallahassee doesn't have to worry about that. But flooding rains, the potential for some damaging winds, potentially tropical storm force winds up that direction if it goes that direction. And yeah, that's really the main concerns I'd have right now. And also there is a potential for a few tornadoes. So I was on vacation. I'm heading back to Tampa. You might want to stay on that vacation a little bit longer. The 00Z icon is still consistent. Let me take a look. I haven't really looked. The icon model I don't typically use that much, but I will take a look at it. It has been consistent. The icon model and the whatchamacallit model, European model have been pretty consistent at this point. I didn't realize there's a run at this time. Let me take a look. Yeah, the icon model is still consistent with making landfall somewhere around Cape Coral, but again, it's just one computer model. There's other computer models that have been consistent bringing it towards Panama City. So it's just a very wide variety still right now. By the way, I do apologize if I'm not getting to your question. I will try to answer them off stream. So if you want to go to another video and leave a comment, I'll try to get to them if I didn't already answer them, because I know I have a lot of questions coming in, so I'm not gonna be able to answer every single one. Just kind of heads up there. But make sure, again, if you have not already, hit the subscribe button down below. If you have not already, make sure to like the video as well. And we'll keep you updated with the latest on everything that you need to know. By the way, thank you, Javier, for the $5 super chat. Might pull a Wilma 2.0. Yeah, again, there's a lot of uncertainty still. It really could do anything, and that's why I keep saying don't trust one computer model. There's really a lot of hype around this. A lot of people early on were saying it's going to make direct landfall in Panama City. It's going to make a direct landfall in Tampa. there's really odds of they're pretty equal across the entire board where it might actually go. So don't try to, you know, say the European, I've been saying a lot, but the European model has been very consistent. Does that mean it'll be accurate? No, but consistency long-term is typically pretty accurate, and the European model has been, you know, known to be pretty accurate long-term. So again, it really could make landfall anywhere in Florida. The highest probabilities of where it might make landfall again would probably be the West Coast, but there's also equal chances back up near Panama City. So again, just make sure you're prepared. Anywhere along the West Coast, or really anywhere in Florida, you should at least be prepared for it, just in case. By the way, if you're just tuning in, if you're literally just tuning in, the latest advisory came out from the National Hurricane Center. And the cone has basically been condensed a little bit. So you can see here, it's much more condensed. Long term, there's still a large bubble of uncertainty. One thing to keep in mind, though, is west of Tampa, it is currently forecasted to still be a Category 3 hurricane. Unless otherwise it goes like, you know, again, there's a possibility that this does track something like this. There's also a possibility it goes like this. It could even go like that. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities here. But again, if it went further east, it would likely make landfall as a Category 3 or maybe even a Category 4. It's not out of the question. If it went kind of in this line, though, it would make landfall up here most likely as a Category 1. If it did something like this, it could make landfall as any sort of category of a hurricane. If it went up this direction, it would probably be a tropical storm or hurricane on landfall. So again, there's just so much uncertainty with the landfall intensity. Just make sure you're prepared. That's all I got to say. I mean, I really can't say much more than that right now because, again, there's still a large cone that we're looking at overall with this system. And by the way, it's expected to at least become a major hurricane over western Cuba probably by Tuesday. So just a little update there. But it does not seem like it'll become a Category 4 too early into the Gulf of Mexico. It seems like it might be a little bit after that. So make sure you're prepared. That's all I got to say. Again, I cannot give you specific impacts. So if you're asking like what you can expect in a certain town or location, there's a lot of answers to that. There's nothing that I can give you specific details on, though, in terms of like, you're going to see 20 inches of rain or 10 inches of rain or 5 inches, whatever it might be. I can't give you that specific answer because, again, it depends on what happens and where this actually goes over the next few days. We'll really determine its long-term track across Florida. So again, it realistically could go anywhere in this cone. And again, it's still a very large cone. This is a look, by the way, at the distance. So the latest update shows the cone much, you know, smaller here. It's only 200 miles wide of uncertainty. That's just off the coast with the Category 4 strength. And then back up here, the cone of uncertainty extends almost 400 miles, you know, from almost just west of Panama City back through about just east of Daytona Beach. And the cone, I don't think has shifted a whole lot. Yeah, it shifted very minimally over here. I think right was included before. It's no longer included. But that's what we're looking at as right now. So yeah, big update. Big update. Thanks, James. I appreciate it. Yeah, again, stay safe if you're taking any videos or photos or anything like that. You know, don't risk your life to take a photo or video. It's not worth it. So if you want to send in photos or videos, though, feel free, but just do them safely. If you're, you know, at least in terms of being in the track of the system. I do plan, by the way, so this is what I'm thinking. So for those that are wondering on my plan with the system, because again, I am in Florida, I will be experiencing this most likely to some extent. My plan is if my school does cancel classes next week, or this week technically, Wednesday and Thursday, I do plan on doing long live streams. So depending on when landfall is, let's say landfall's Thursday, I plan on doing a long live stream Wednesday and Thursday. If they're not canceled, I'll do some sort of night stream on both nights, kind of like tonight. So that's my plan as of right now. I do think they'll be canceled to some extent. I don't know what extent, but see what happens. But I might even do it on, by the way, if I don't have school on Friday or something like that, and like that's the day after it makes landfall, I might go out chasing a little bit, just taking photos and videos of damage and whatnot. So I might do something like that. Maybe a little storm chasing sort of stream. So we'll see what happens. Where do I go? I'm staying in Florida. I'm bracing it. I'm prepared. I'm very well prepared for this storm. I am not on the coast directly, by the way, so you don't have to be worried about me, you know, have my house swallowed up or something like that. That's not gonna happen. But I do plan again on, I'll be safe. Don't be worried. I'll be fine. I will be doing live streams during the storm, so we'll see what happens. But I do have a generator, I have water, I have all the essentials, so I'm prepared. So just make sure you're prepared as well along with that, because it's gonna be a bumpy ride. I have school too. A lot of people have school. A lot of people have school. Including me. Including me, but they might get canceled. We'll see. I will not say my specific location, by the way. I'll just say I'm in Florida, but again, you don't have to be worried about where I am, because I will be fine. I will be fine. Again, I'm in college, so it's not really that big of a deal, but I will be safe. I'm technically in a building that would uphold a Category 4 hurricane, so even then, I will be fine. But yeah, we'll be chilling, if you want to say that. This is my first hurricane. This actually is my first hurricane. Again, I've actually never experienced a tornado either before. I've been under like 10 tornado warnings in my life, but never have any of them actually produced a tornado. But yeah, I've experienced a tropical storm, but not a hurricane. That tropical storm was pretty minimal. I am not Cole. I do not know of any evacuation orders yet. There might be some for the Keys at some point soon, but I don't know. I really don't. I'm not entirely sure. I don't issue that stuff, obviously, and I don't really know. As of what I know right now, there's no evacuation orders. There might be some, though, coming up. We'll see. But obviously, if there's evacuation orders for me, I will be taking them seriously, so don't, be worried about that either. I have backup plans. Actually, funny enough, Evan was offering for me to go up to wherever he is. You guys know who Evan is. A lot of you guys are new viewers, I think, so. I heard about that, Daniel. I heard about that. Yeah, that typhoon. It's very sad. That typhoon looked vicious, too, over in the Philippines. But unfortunately, the United States has to deal with their own type of... I wouldn't call it typhoon, obviously, but they have to deal with their own type of storm at this point. Yeah, probably going to become a Category 4, and then... Again, it won't make landfall as a Category 4, so the wind gusts that get up to 160 miles per hour will likely not impact the United States. But what would possibly be some wind gusts a little bit higher, or a little bit lower than that. The wind radius is not updated yet, unfortunately, so I can't show you that. But again, near Tampa, realistically, if this was to be the exact track of it, which again, things will change, but if it were to make an exact track like this, close to Tampa, I would expect wind gusts somewhere between... at peak around 100 to maybe 115 miles per hour. So, but it depends on where you are in Tampa. Again, if you're along the coast, it's a much higher chance of that happening. All right. Back over to here. Will South Carolina get a tornado threat from this? You might long term. There's definitely a possibility. Evan, this map you sent me, I don't know what's going on here. Oh wait, no, it just updated. I don't know what the world this thing means. If you guys are interested about evacuation zones, I'll go ahead and put the link in chat. I don't know what any of this really means. I'm not gonna lie. So if you guys want to take a look at it though, if you're from Florida along the coast especially, take a look at that for your own knowledge for your evacuation zone. In case there is an evacuation order for your area. But that's really the best I can do. I don't understand this entire thing, but I'm guessing if there's an evacuation order or something like that, your zone would be called or something like that, maybe? I don't know. I'm not entirely sure. I've never gone through a Florida hurricane, so we'll see what happens. I saw that, Zach. Yeah, the icon model's been showing that. We'll see. Again, computer models have been kind of all over the place. Anywhere in the Carolinas does have a realistic potential of a low-end tornado potential going into, like, late week and the weekend, basically. The link's in chat. I posted it, so you have to just scroll up a little bit. It's posted by Max Velocity. I think it's, like, the yellow tag. Might be on your end. So... By the way, thank you for everybody subscribing. Again, just a friendly reminder, if you've not already, just hit that red button down below and subscribe. We're only 16 subscribers from 18,600. And again, we will be going live almost every night this week, covering this storm with the latest updates and everything that you need to know. So make sure to hit the subscribe button if you've not already. You know how wide the center is? Of this? You mean like the eye? Because the eye is not really it's not really measurable because there's not really an eye right now. It's a lot of storm activity. The center of it is kind of like right here. It's hard to see. My radar is not nearly as high def as the tropical tidbits. Let me go over to tropical tidbits real quick. Potential debris signature in Long Island. I'll take a look real quick. What in the world is going on? What is going on in Long Island right now? There's some like serious storms over there. I am not seeing any debris signature, by the way, in Long Island, but there is a possibility that there is at least some fairly strong rotation with these storms. Pretty sure one of the rotations is off the coast. It might be a water spout, but yeah, those are some serious storms on the eastern Long Island. Hey, thank you, Michael, for the $10 super chat. I appreciate that a lot. Thank you very much. I appreciate all the support, by the way. Whether you become a member or super chatted or donated, I really do appreciate it. If you want to support our page, by the way, again, I do this pretty much all the time. So if you want to support, you can always become a member with the top link in the description, or you can send a donation through the donation link, which is pinned in the chat, but not required by any means. Make sure your money goes towards preparing if you're in Florida, by the way. Not spend it on me. Make sure you get prepared because, again, water goes a long way. Necessities go a long way with this sort of thing. Again, make sure you're prepared. I think spend around a few $100 just preparing for this, so can get a little bit expensive. All right, let me see what questions you guys have. I'm trying to get into a few here. I know, Katie, it's crazy. Yeah, Kenny, I mean, kind of realistically, again, it's a lot of uncertainty. You can't put all your, marbles into one bag, basically, with what computer model. I don't know even what that saying is, but you can't basically put 100% of your forecast into one computer model. And the thing is, the computer models have been kind of all over the place. You could realistically make your own forecast, but the reason why it's hard to predict this is of many factors, but one of them is the jet stream that dips next week. Where will it be dipping and how much of an impact will it make? That's really the big question. So the jet stream up to the north has a big part into where this goes long term, and the jet stream is eventually going to shift east, but yeah, I mean, it has a big part into what we can expect long term. A lot of question marks, as I said before, long term on this system. Yeah, cheap. I mean, I wouldn't say it was cheap. I'm in college, so I don't really have to worry nearly as much about it, but exactly, Kenny. Yeah, there's a lot of variables. You're 100% correct. The amount of variables that there are that are in hurricane forecasting like this is substantial. With Fiona, I mean, there was a lot of variables there. Fiona was forecasted to, there was a big cone early on and ended up taking this track, but the cone initially, there was a possibility that it could have actually gone west. But the high pressure system over the Bermuda High was able to steer it off to the north, and eventually the jet stream took it off into Canada. So kind of a similar situation, but this one is all about the jet stream basically, and a little bit of the high pressure system. So, well, Pensacola getting rain from this. That's actually a good question. You probably will see something in terms of rain. Will it be flooding rain? Probably not, but you will probably see some sort of rain out of this. I mean, honestly, I'm pretty sure, to be honest with you, I think about 100% of Florida will see rain. Just to what magnitude will you see is really the big question. But it depends on how far west it goes. Again, if it goes further west, you might see, the current forecast from the European model, for example. Let me go and show you. This is the current forecast from the European model. Obviously, it's just a computer model, but long term, it actually shows almost nothing for Pensacola, if not just like a little trace. The GFS model, which has been a little bit further off to the west, shows really also minimal rain amounts, maybe a trace. So it seems like for at least Pensacola, you'll probably see almost nothing in terms of rain, regardless of its track. Even if it went through Panama City, you'd probably see minimal rainfall totals. I think our highest rainfall totals will probably be wherever the eye goes, which is obviously pretty realistic at this point. Wherever it goes is really the big question mark. But this is, again, one computer model, the European model, showing that it would bring a pretty substantial amount of rain to the west coast. And if the eye continued its track through this area, it could bring maybe about 10 inches to Gainesville. So we're looking at it right now. And Jacksonville even. I mean, again, this is just one computer model, though. It's not forecast, but it's a potential that we might see that much rain in those areas. All right, back over to here. What do you think the storm surge will be for Tampa? If it continues its track, it realistically could go between 10 to maybe 13 feet, maybe even a little bit more than that. But again, it depends on its track. If it goes further west, it'll be much less. If it goes further east, it could even be higher. So the current storm surge forecast, if you're just tuning in, let me go and bring it up again. I'll go back and switch my screen again. Apologize, I keep doing this. Let's see. This is the latest storm surge forecast. I have to change it again. But this is the current storm surge forecast. It does not include Tampa yet because it's uncertain of what will happen there right now. But at least in the next few days, realistically, we could see 4 to 7 feet between Bonita Beach and Englewood. So that area there, 4 to 7 feet of storm surge possible. From Bonita Beach through East Cape Sable, it could be between 3 to 5 feet is the current forecast of storm surge, and then the Florida Keys is currently between 2 to 4 feet. So it ranges right now, but back up near Tampa, realistically, I can probably expect at least 4 to 7 feet, but it probably will be higher than that. But again, it's still a long-term forecast. We're still talking a few days from now. But yeah, it could be higher. It'll probably be around at least 10 feet, though, I'd say, if it continued its same track in terms of storm surge. No, Miami will not see direct impact from this. You'll probably see at least some rain, some gusty winds, but you will not see a direct impact from this. But Miami, just be prepared. But no reason to, again, no reason to panic for anybody in Florida. Just make sure you have a plan and be prepared. It's the biggest thing I can say at this point. I've said it a lot. Any chance it'll go further east from the cone? Do you mean like outside of the cone? Honestly, like at this point, realistically, I cannot see the eye of this storm going outside of this cone by much. If it were to, it'd be by like 5 to 10 miles. Because like the furthest east I've seen any computer models at this point, which again, computer model is just one little factor. But I mean, the furthest east I've seen is like Naples area near Cape Coral. Farthest west I've seen up to this point was like Panama City, which is here. So I can't see it going really that far out of this area. I honestly think this cone is very accurate to the uncertainty of what we're seeing and where the eye of the storm could go. So I'm thinking as of right now, at least. But I don't think it'll shift much more to the east or west, unless something dramatically changes over the next 48 hours. But that seems, again, kind of unlikely right now. Cherry, overall flooding for Miami is kind of on the low threat right now. It's like flash flooding, at least for Tuesday, I know, is slight risk. So it's right now on kind of like the low end potential. Flash flooding may be possible though. Hey Cindy, how you doing? Welcome back. It's kind of crazy how people predict this. A lot of math and a lot of science goes into it. Trust me, these computer models are really off of a lot of math and physics and whatnot. There's a lot that goes into it, to making a computer model. You think Tampa is at a direct or at a risk for a direct hit? Yes, I do think there's a risk that Tampa could get directly hit, but again, there's a lot of uncertainty. Realistically, it could go literally anywhere in this bubble, or uncertainty cone, whatever you want to call it. It's basically a cone. That's what they call it. But anywhere from about Panama City back through about Cape Coral, that is a large area that we're still looking at for where this might make landfall. It could make a direct hit to anywhere in that cone, but realistically, the highest probability, I've kind of said already, is like in the West Coast region here or back up. But really, I kind of keep making the same circle here, but it's basically in this area, I'd say. So from about just east of Panama City through the Big Bend back through Tampa probably has the best chance right now. But again, it could happen outside of there. So I am Sparky. I am. You are correct. Yeah, nerd, that's a big thing. Trust me, this year that I'm currently in, it's painful. The math and physics are really difficult. Math is, actually for me has been pretty easy. Calculus 1 and 2 have actually been pretty easy, but for me at least, it varies from person to person. But physics is a pain. It's not something that I really like doing, and humanities is kind of the same way. So What do you take in college? Depends on what your major is. I mean, if you're a meteorology major, you're typically going to be taking Calc 1 through 3, physics, at least 2 to 3 physics class typically, sometimes 1, depends on what university you go to. A bunch of weather classes, obviously, and sometimes you'll have like humanities classes. So there's some random classes get thrown in there. I'd just rather take all meteorology classes, but obviously they do it their own way. It's like chemistry, I think sometimes. There's like a physics lab and a chemistry lab that you might take as well. Again, it depends on college, though. Anything behind this hurricane? Do you mean in terms of like more tropical activity, Haley? Yeah, Haley. If you mean that, then really outside of there, as of right now, there's not a whole lot. The only other thing right now is like in the central Atlantic Ocean, which is not going to be going towards the United States. Hey, Miss K, how you doing? Thank you again very much for your generous donation off stream. I really appreciate that. Actually, let me play the notification one more time. I didn't play it. Miss K was very generous off stream earlier today and sent a $25 or excuse me, $75 donation, which again, very greatly appreciated. That's basically all my that's a lot of my prepping work at this point in terms of Florida and what to expect with this hurricane and whatnot. Isn't hurricane season ending soon? Yeah, it's not too far from ending. We're kind of in like the peak month. We're in the peak month, so after this we will probably start to see a little bit lesser of activity. You're in Tampa, where do you think you should go? Orlando isn't a horrible option, but there's much better options. Honestly, right now, it's too early to say if you need to evacuate where you should go. Have different plans, though. Like, if you're, for example, if you live in Tampa and you're in the track of this hurricane, have different plans. So, you know, let's just say the system actually went further off to the west. Orlando might not be a horrible choice, but, you know, have a plan in case it does go through Tampa and Orlando, for example. You might want to have like another plan that says, hey, let me go up to Lake City, you know, that sort of thing. So once this track becomes a little bit more specific and more narrow, we'll have a better idea of where you need to make sure that you have those plans and, you know, make sure you have multiple plans, not just one. Because if you literally were to say, well, I'm in Tampa, I'm going to go have a plan and go down to Cape Coral, for example. That's a horrible plan, by the way. But if you were to do that, you know, it's just a very minimal plan because it really, the track and the difference in between cities here, I mean, really, realistically, the cone could literally be this. So then you're gonna be like, oh crap, what should my plan be? Well, then you have to figure out another plan. So you should at least have 2 or 3 plans. I personally have 3 different plans already. So if the storm was to impact me significantly, I have a plan to go one place and another place and another place. I currently have 3 plans. So I'm prepared. I am in Florida currently for college, so I am prepared for sure. Make sure you have a plan. No, Miami will not see significant impacts. Again, if you're in Miami, you will not have to be panicking or worrying really at all about significant impacts. You could see some impacts, though, including potential for maybe some isolated flooding rain, maybe some flash flooding, for example. Minor storm surge possible, but I think that's a very, very low threat right now. And beyond that, I mean, maybe some gusty winds. I don't expect Miami to be that greatly impacted, though, right now. Unless something, again, dramatically changes in the next 24 to 48 hours, which is possible, but it seems pretty low. By the way, for those that do live in Florida and you're in like that Florida memes group or whatever on Facebook or any of those, and you're seeing like, you know, people, Floridians don't take hurricanes seriously or whatever, and just make sure you're actually preparing. Don't take those things that seriously because it's obviously a joke. Category 3 hurricane, category 2, whatever hurricane can do some pretty significant damage. So I can't urge that enough. And again, if you are in Florida, make sure that you have a plan, make sure you're prepared, etc. And yeah, again, local authorities will tell you when you need to evacuate. They have a whole thing on when they will tell you to evacuate. It's a great point by Pixel in the chat. Again, you do not have to evacuate right now. Just make sure, when you get that evacuation order, you have a plan to go somewhere else, because we very well could see some pretty significant storm surge and flooding rains and whatnot to some areas. So my friend in Tampa Bay isn't joking when he says he doesn't care about it. Yeah, I mean, some people are gonna be like that, and unfortunately, some of those people that do that, have some pretty significant implications from it. So, but again, there's a lot of time between now and then. It could, again, make landfall in Tampa. It could make landfall in Panama City. It can make landfall anywhere in this large cone that's like 400 miles. So, again, it very well could go anywhere. Purdue University in Daytona Beach, I believe, has actually issued a mandatory campus evacuation at noon on Monday. Really? You know what campus? I've only heard of one campus. Does anybody from Florida, by the way, know what campuses in terms of college or universities? Does anybody know which ones have? I know USF has. That's the only one I've heard so far that actually has some sort of closure or evacuation thing. I'm not sure what other schools might. I know Hillsborough County or something doesn't have school this week, or at least through Thursday. That's the only one I've heard, though. Florida State might have something. Florida colleges closed from hurricane. Let's see. I don't know if there's a list here. I think it's mostly Tampa Bay so far. Oh, Bethune-Cookman University issued mandatory evacuations. I'm assuming that's the one that you mean. What I'm seeing. Yeah, so that's the one I'm seeing right now. So that's actually, I think is that Daytona Beach? Bethune-Cookman University? Or is that somewhere else? Anybody know where that is? I have no clue. I'm not very familiar with Florida. Yeah, USF does. They do have, they're apparently closed. I'm not sure from when until where, but. That's in Daytona Beach. Okay, so we do actually have a school. That's on the East Coast. So apparently there's a school on the East Coast here near Daytona Beach. There's Daytona Beach. That is actually already ordered mandatory evacuations. That's Bethune-Cookman University. That's over, that, by the way, that's on the East Coast. So, just for reference, there's a East Coast closure or evacuation sort of thing going. Check on Disney closing. I don't think Disney's made any announcements. I would know if Disney was closing because pretty familiar with that, but yeah, all the theme parks right now are monitoring it. Again, if they were to close, they probably wouldn't until like Monday, or at least Tuesday, I would say. They would probably announce something Monday or Tuesday. Tomorrow, I think a lot more announcements are coming. Somebody going to live stream the thing in the event in person? Yeah, people will be live out there. Trust me. There's a lot of people that are storm chasing and whatnot. So, yeah, I won't be the only one live streaming. I think tonight I'm pretty much the only person, but I'll be live streaming again tomorrow night, most likely. 99% sure I will. Tuesday night, I probably will be live. Wednesday, Thursday, I plan on being live. I'm planning on being live almost every day this week. So again, if you've not already, make sure, again, to hit the red button down below and subscribe to the YouTube channel. And yeah, just make sure you subscribe. And make sure to turn on post notifications by clicking the bell icon down below so you get notified when I go live. Because I do plan, again, on going live tomorrow. UCF is open, so that's what we've heard. So that's still open. SWGA, I don't have a clue. I only know about a couple. Southern Florida, or Florida Southern College is closed, apparently. USF is closed. University of Southern Florida, I think. So there's a few schools that are closed. I know there are a lot of colleges monitoring it. I think a lot of them are going to close, or they're going to announce closures tomorrow, most likely. By the way, just an update on the hurricane, or the tropical storm, excuse me. Life-threatening storm surge and hurricane-force winds are expected in portions of western Cuba by late Monday. That is the latest update from the National Hurricane Center. Just a little update there. For those that might be in Cuba, or know anybody from Cuba. University of Tampa is closed till next Monday. Thank you for the report. So that's apparently another thing. Again, these are just rumors. I'm not entirely sure how factual they are, so don't take my word for it. But make sure you look into it first if you are actually at those colleges or you know anybody from them, because there might be, but I have no clue. I'm not confirming it. I'm just reading the chat. Could it shift east? Yeah, it could. It realistically could shift a little bit further east, but it wouldn't be by a huge stretch. The furthest east it would probably go, again, would probably be like, I mean, I don't think it's going to go much further east in terms of the cone of uncertainty. Where it makes landfall, though, it could realistically make landfall anywhere up in this area. It could literally go anywhere from in this cone. So Could go as far east as Cape Coral and south, or it could go as far north and west as Panama City. It's a large area. So it's not going to just be a one and done sort of situation where we know the exact track, because there's a lot of things and a lot of variables that go into it. Should we have the facts about where Ian will go on Monday? No. We will not have the exact track by Monday. By probably early Tuesday, I would say, is going to be when we have a lot more specific track. We will have a better idea of where it goes, though, by tomorrow evening. I would say, at least. So, I have a much better idea by then. But we will have actually more forecasts too on storm surge along the coast and whatnot too. And again, more school closures. I do plan on doing a longer live stream tomorrow if my classes do indeed get canceled. So I will keep you posted. If that does end up happening, then I will have a longer live stream most likely tomorrow. I might start it as early as 7 to 8, that time frame, and I'll probably be live for a while. So it might be longer than tonight. So there'll be a lot more information tomorrow than there is today. And more specific information as well in terms of forecasts and whatnot. Southwest Georgia having flashbacks to Michael. Now, Lisa, you don't have to be worried about that sort of situation, because if it does go towards Southwest Georgia, let's say it goes in this track, there is a lot of wind shear in this area being forecasted. That's going to weaken this system down to a Category 1 hurricane, or potentially less, as it goes into Georgia, for example. So if it took that path, it would be much weaker. In comparison to if it made landfall over in Tampa, it would be potentially a Category 2 or 3, because there's not as much wind shear. So, thank you, Accuracy, by the way, Luke and Soul, for subscribing. Again, guys, if you have subscribed tonight, I really do appreciate it. There's a lot of names. I'm not going to be able to get to all of them. I think we've gained like 800 subscribers tonight, so there's no way I'm going to be able to read all of them. But I do appreciate everybody subscribing. If you have not already, again, feel free to. And we'll be live again tomorrow. North Carolina impacts, too early to tell, but rain is currently my main concern up there. There's maybe some gusty winds, too, but no problem, Lisa. There's actually a gas tax thing in Florida starting October 1st, and it goes through the end of the month. Apparently, it's 25 cents off on gas the entire month per gallon. So, I guess that's something to look forward to if you're in Florida. Because I actually, believe it or not, I have like nothing in my tank right now. So, I do need to get gas. I should have already gotten gas, but... Hey, appreciate it, Sparky. Appreciate you tuning in, by the way. Again, if everybody... How's everybody doing tonight, by the way? I haven't really talked to you guys much tonight, other than a few questions. It's been a busy night. The chat was flying earlier. I'm telling you, when we were at like 1,500 viewers, I was not able to keep up with the chat. I was not able to answer that many questions. New watches issued for Sarasota. Is that the watches that I already knew about? Where's Sarasota? Isn't it up here somewhere? Up here? Did it actually get issued that far north? Or is that a new watch? Let me take a look real quick. Pretty sure that area... Oh, maybe the watches go that far north. I was looking earlier. Cape Coral, it's south of Sarasota. The watch is not including Sarasota, it's just south of there. Port Charlotte is, Cape Coral is, but Sarasota is not included right now. Hey, how you doing, Catalina? How you doing? Welcome. I feel like there's always gas shortages in the south after a hurricane. There probably is. I mean, you know, importing during a hurricane is kind of hard to do. All right, so the following schools will release students at 12:30 p.m. on Monday. Palm Harbor University High School, another Highland Middle School, and John Hopkins Middle School. Thank you, Dennis. I don't even know where those are, but apparently, again, that's not what... I can't confirm it, but that's what we saw in chat, so... And make sure to double check. If you hear me saying any university names that are closed or delayed or whatever it might be, make sure you double check online, because I can't 100% confirm everything. Thanks, Headlock. I appreciate it. I love doing weather. Love doing weather. It's always been my passion. Interesting to see what happens, though, as this moves off to the north and goes towards Florida. Thanks, Cherry. Appreciate it. Yeah, I'm actually, for those that are new here, I don't really ever talk about that much, but yeah, I'm a pretty small channel. Again, I only started doing nationwide weather back in May of this year. So it has not been, or actually technically June of this year. So it's only been about 3 to 4 months. And I began with like 2,000 subscribers. Now I'm almost up to 20,000. I honestly consider myself to be pretty accurate with forecasting myself. But yeah, I used to only do North Texas weather for the first 3 years. So I didn't really do nationwide stuff up until about this year. So I think about Sarasota. Sarasota, again, it depends on the track of this. If it goes further west, you're not going to see a whole lot. But if it goes in this direction that it currently is right, kind of forecasted as of right now, you could see some potentially substantial storm surge and obviously damaging winds and flooding rains. Definitely not out of the question. So, who do I think is the best weatherman? You mean meteorologist? Well, I mean, I'm assuming you're talking about a meteorologist. My personal favorite meteorologist is Harvey Leonard. He works at WCVB in Boston. I've actually met him a couple times, and I've actually gone to a studio a few times, but yeah, I would say you might have never heard of him. Unless you're from Boston, you probably haven't heard of him, or New England. Thank you, Patricia. I appreciate it. Hey, thanks, Headlock, for the $5 super chat. I appreciate that a lot. Thank you very much. It's gonna be an exciting future, for sure. It's been a busy night, to say the least, too. Nope, gas nav again. Yeah, I'm gonna probably fill it up pretty soon. I plan on doing it tomorrow, if I can. There you go, Birthday. I appreciate it. Can you go over the 11p update? Yeah, sure, Rebecca. Yeah, I'll go over it real quick. I've kind of mentioned it a few times. Really, I'll just note the big changes. I'm not going to note, you know, like the small stuff, but a few big changes. Category 4 level strength is expected to be slightly later than what was forecasted, not by a whole lot, but just west of Cape Coral by about 100 miles. But again, the cone of uncertainty is very large. One thing to note, though, with the latest update is that this cone is shrunk down a bit. So we're seeing a little bit more of a shrunk cone. Now, long term, the cone has not really changed a whole lot, but the likelihood of this going further east, potentially towards the Great Bend or into potentially Tampa and whatnot, or Sarasota, that sort of area, is now a little bit higher. The overall cone has shifted a little bit further east. And again, the cone is still pretty wide here. We're still talking about 400 miles apart here in terms of where this might make landfall in terms of a diameter. But overall, not a huge change. But it is expected to potentially be a Category 3 hurricane just off the coast of Tampa with maximum wind gusts up to 150 miles per hour. So that's at least what's forecasted as of right now. Yeah, Weather Freak, I can't tell you how I blew up. I really don't know. I don't really understand it. I have no clue. I really couldn't tell you. I don't have any secrets behind, you know, what I've done on YouTube. I've always just loved what I do. I've been very consistent. I've been doing it for 3 years, mostly on Facebook up until this year. I did a lot more on YouTube. And yeah, it's one of those things. It's just like, I don't know how I even got to how many subscribers I have. I really don't. I don't know. I couldn't tell you. So yes, wind gusts could get up to 150. Now, that's still pretty far west of Tampa. So if you were in Tampa, again, if that was to be the exact track, Tampa might be up to 100 miles per hour, maybe 115 miles per hour in terms of wind gusts. But again, that's long term. It's not a forecast. It's a possibility. It's definitely possible, for sure. Yeah, Harvey Leonard retired full-time. I'm pretty sure he still goes back there a couple of times for bigger events. But he's pretty much, he has retired full-time. I was actually going to do an internship up there, but I wasn't the right year yet. So I'm hoping to do an internship at WCB this upcoming summer, maybe the following summer. We'll see what happens. The ZRZ GFS has shifted back west. Yeah, this is why I keep saying, you know, it's the models keep changing. They have been kind of going back and forth. The GFS model has been going way back and forth a lot. And here's the latest GFS model run. This is why I keep saying it's just such a question mark at this point. But this is the GFS model. This is the latest computer model run that just come in. And not a huge change, but it has gone a little bit further west. See, it's further west here off the coast. and it kind of sits there. But again, one computer model run, and it very well could go further east or west. It's still a big question mark. We're only at hour 81, so I can't go further than this, but after that, I would assume that it goes up possibly into the Big Bend area. That's at least what the latest model run shows on the GFS. But again, I'm not really 100% bought on the GFS model with how inaccurate it's already been, or at least how inconsistent, I should say, it's been. So that's what we're looking at right now there with the latest model run. If you're in western or central Cuba, you will probably get hit pretty substantially. There are hurricane warnings for western Cuba. I would expect western Cuba to get hit the worst. And this system, by the way, might already be a hurricane. Obviously they're not there right now to measure the wind speed, but this is very organized now. It's becoming much more organized, has been over the last few hours. So it might be now a Category 1 hurricane. Again, it's hard to tell with how little knowledge we have right now because there's no hurricane hunters there, but very well might be a hurricane at this point. It's a possibility. And if it were to be, it could become a major hurricane just before it hits Cuba. Where's Cape Canaveral? Cape Canaveral is, let me go and put it back to the regular map. I'm pretty sure it's like right about here. Yeah, it's like in this area, so I think it's right here, right? Where is, yeah, it's right there. It just didn't show up. North of Palm Bay, but it is in the cone, actually, technically. Cape Canaveral is in the cone of uncertainty, but obviously it's on the outer edge. Typically, the further in you are into this, the higher probability it is. If you're on like the way outer cone here, it's a little bit lower of a probability than what it were to be in the middle here. So. I think Alabama and Mississippi area are out of the question. You might still see some impacts, but it would be very minimal, maybe just some rain. I mean, I don't expect anything that crazy for Alabama or Mississippi at this point. When will the storm stop? I mean, it depends on what the direction is long term. If it goes out this direction, it could be much stronger. If it goes into the United States, it'll probably be much weaker, and it'll eventually go into New England. But that's long term. Again, I'm not going to give a forecast that long term because it can be pretty variable at this point in terms of what happens in the short term. Thanks, Katie. Yeah, European model has always been pretty consistent. That's definitely one of those things. European model, I always find more consistent, and typically in some cases, it's a bit more accurate. By the way, hurricane hunters are en route right now to go to the storm again. So, just heads up. Actually, you can see it on my map here. This is the hurricane hunters en route right now. The purple dots are representing their wind speed measurements right now and whatnot. So, hurricane hunters are on the way. They've been moving a little bit here. They're moving pretty quick. So yeah, hurricane hunters are going down there right now. They will go ahead and measure the wind speeds and whatnot. Little purple dots. It's very tiny. Home Depot's got to be packed. They'll be packed next week. Yeah, unfortunately, I'm hoping that we don't see a huge storm or anything, but you know, it seems like it's becoming more and more likely there's gonna be some pretty significant impacts to Florida. I'm hoping, honestly, for, you know, not a whole lot, but it's a difference between hoping and obviously what actually realistically will happen. Because we could probably, you know, I'm honestly, I've kind of said before that the best case scenario is this going up here, possibly towards Panama City, because the shear is gonna be stronger, it's gonna weaken quicker. If it goes closer to Tampa and whatnot, there's gonna be much more significant impacts. But yeah, we still got a lot of time, so don't, you know, panic or anything. But the cone is still very large, so really, realistically, it could go anywhere. Hey, Penny, how you doing? Welcome back. Yeah, the hurricane hunters are gonna be flying into the hurricane. That'll be over probably in an hour or two, I'd say. Yes, Katie, correct. almost become a hurricane. It could become a hurricane. It might already be a hurricane. Sorry, I'm pouring my water. It realistically could already be a hurricane. It has really intensified in the last couple of hours, but we don't know for sure because the hurricane hunters aren't there yet. They are currently en route. But realistically, it probably will become a hurricane no later than overnight tonight. I think it'll be a hurricane by the time you wake up tomorrow. It's really intensified. Patricia, not right now. No, I don't expect anything, or at least in the foreseeable future. When's the next update? 2 a.m. I will not be up until 2 a.m. by the way, but the next update is at 2 a.m. It's typically a smaller update. They have these intermediate ones that go from like 2 a.m., 8 a.m., 2 p.m., 8 p.m. They have the main advisories that come out at 5 a.m., 11 a.m., 5 p.m., and 11 p.m. And we just got the 11 p.m. update about an hour ago. So our next update, which is a smaller one, it's a smaller advisory, is going to be at 2 a.m. And then we have a bigger one at 5 a.m. So yeah, those updates will come out. Again, I don't expect a major change going to tomorrow morning with the cone. There might be one going to the late morning, or late morning into the afternoon. Do storm hunters make good money? Do you mean like hurricane hunters, the ones that fly in the planes? I have no clue. They might though, I'm not sure. RM, it's too early to tell whether they should evacuate. Follow your local evacuation orders, because I'm not going to be able to give you that sort of advice. They typically will give you better advice than what I really could give, because there's really, again, there's a lot of uncertainty still of where this might go. It could go again towards Panama City. It could go towards Tampa or Sarasota area. It could go in between. There's a lot of uncertainty still, so it's too early to kind of say evacuations and whatnot. We still have a large cone of uncertainty. Any chance it can move back to the west? There's a chance. There's a chance for anything, but have I taken a stretch break? No, I've not. I've actually not gotten up this entire time. But I do plan on ending the stream here pretty soon, so. How often will I be able to go live during this? I plan on going live every night. If school and whatnot gets canceled, or classes, oops, I didn't mean to do that. If classes get canceled and whatnot, I will probably, be live longer though. I'll probably be live for like 6 to 8 hours, maybe even 10-hour live streams. Day of landfall, I might be live for like 8 to 10 hours. We'll see though. Thanks, Kenneth. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Okay, so apparently hurricane hunters make $30,000 to $70,000 a year, somewhere in that range. I don't know how accurate that is, but according to Google. So for that person that was wondering, they probably have more benefits than anything, because I'm pretty sure it's a government job. Alrighty. Just a friendly reminder, by the way, if you're just tuning in, again, hit the subscribe button down below. It's the red button. We're only 8 subscribers from 18,700. And make sure to hit the subscribe button. We'll keep you updated with the latest on hurricane and tropic updates and whatnot with, again, Tropical Storm Ian, which is most likely going to be a hurricane overnight tonight. But other than that, I'm going to go ahead and end the live stream. I do appreciate everybody tuning in. As always, it's been a great live stream. Again, I'll have another coverage most likely tomorrow night. Again, I have classes tomorrow, at least for what I know. So I'm going to be doing that. And then I'll probably have a live stream tomorrow evening. So again, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below if you've not already. And also make sure to click the bell icon down below if you want to be notified when I go live, if I do, tomorrow evening. But other than that, I really do appreciate everybody tuning in tonight. It's been a very busy live stream and a lot of stuff, obviously, that I went over. More specific details will most likely be kind of put in place tomorrow, so we'll have a bit more of an idea of where this might track a bit more specifically than what it is now, because, again, the cone of uncertainty is still 400 miles for the landfall, so it's still a very large area. But I do appreciate everybody tuning in. Just a quick little reiteration. I appreciate Jaws for being a VIP chaser member. Appreciate that a lot. I appreciate everybody that has super chatted tonight, especially let me find where their name was. Marty for the $120 worth of super chats. I really do appreciate that. And along with Miss K for the $75 donation off the stream. Really just helped them out the page a lot. All the other super chats and all that, really do appreciate it as well. Appreciate everybody subscribing tonight. And again, we'll be probably live again tomorrow evening. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Have a great, safe rest of your night, and we will keep you updated with the latest.